drive time on a Monday afternoon, about 10 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It is another beautiful day. It's still a little warm for late September as we're about to turn our calendars to October, but I'll take the warm weather while we can get it. Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend, and as it is every day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson behind the glass today. Love Mondays this time of year. We have just a ton to do, a lot to do on the show. Some good, some bad. Of course, we're going to talk about the college football weekend behind us and look ahead to potentially what comes next for our in-state teams, namely BYU. Things good for Kalani and his squad right now, and the University of Utah, where things are not as good. We'll get to it on the show today. Monday Night Football, of course, you can hear Monday Night Football on our radio station. The week of pro football will culminate tonight after just chaos in the NFL. Chaos in college football, too. I mean, football is just such a unpredictable sport. Tonight you get the Dolphins and the Titans down at Hard Rock in Miami. And then the, I guess, official Monday night game will be the Seahawks and the Lions from Ford Field in Detroit. So we'll talk some pro football on the show today. A lot of local guys making some great plays. Tyler Huntley, speaking of local players, set to get the start under center for Miami. And with the Tua Tagovailoa situation far from being settled, wonder what it means if Tyler can go ball out tonight. So we'll be cheering for him. Media days for the Utah Jazz. Sparsely attended, according to reports, but we have sound for you guys that at some point we'll bring back around. On Friday of last week, we heard Ryan Smith, Danny Ainge, and Justin Zanuck address the media. We'll get into some of that stuff as the Jazz are about to start. NBA training camp, it's here. It's that time of year where a combination of most everything that goes on is happening right now, including the Utah Hockey Club, about 8 days away from their home opener. They've been undefeated in the preseason. They won a game down in Colorado with a bunch of their youngsters. And so we've got Utah Hockey Club. We've got a little Utah Jazz. Haven't done much NBA over the past couple of months because we're pretty football-centric. And, of course, that will continue today. Real Salt Lake, my goodness gracious, they go up 2-0, and then they allow two more late goals to come home from Austin with only a point. They'll see Minnesota coming up on Wednesday, and right now RSL third on the table as far as the Western Conference goes. They need to maintain a top four seed with 3 matches left to host a home playoff match. So we'll get to some of that on the show today as well. Since you and I last spoke, the New York Knicks and the Minnesota Timberwolves made a trade. It's a big one. Karl Anthony Towns headed to Manhattan, headed to Midtown Manhattan to go play at Madison Square Garden. Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo head to Minnesota to play with Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, and and Joe Ingles. So we even had some NBA news while we were out. Pardon me, don't have a cough button, so if you hear me clear my voice or cough, that's just the deal. So we'll get to some of that, some NBA on the show today. Some sad news. Dikembe Mutombo has passed away at the age of 58 as a result of brain cancer. So some sad news out of the NBA today. All right, good guest list to get you guys started on this Monday afternoon, to get your work week started out the right way. We're going to start out with Brian Jeffries, who's the play-by-play voice of the Arizona Wildcats. Was in town to call the game over the weekend. We'll revisit it. Not an awesome topic right out of the gates, but hey, home of the Utes, man. Got to talk about what went down or maybe what didn't go down at Rice Eccles on Saturday night. Josh Furlong covers the University of Utah for KSL. We'll roll by today. As we do every Monday, we'll give you our Big 12 power rankings. BYU rises, Utah falls. What does that look like on this Monday afternoon? We'll do some Utah Hockey Club with a player today, Logan Cooley, who I've never had a chance to interview. Logan's going to stop by today. And then our friend Sarah Todd from the Deseret News, who covers the University of Utah, covers the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News. Sarah will stop by to give us the takeaways from Media Day and a preview of Jazz training camp as the NBA is here. So Brian Jeffries, Josh Furlong, Logan Cooley, Sarah Todd, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners on a Monday, and that guy, Porter Larson, on this Monday afternoon. You know, I was talking about this crosstalk with Sean today. My son's in town, which I love, miss him. He's back east now. So, you know, growing up, I had season tickets. We went to so many Utah football games, so I wanted to take him to the game on Saturday. I don't know how many games I've been to in that stadium, but I don't recall it being as quiet and unenthusiastic, just with a lack of energy and you got to give the fans something to cheer for. I'm not saying it's the fans' fault, but that was just a weird night overall. Wouldn't you say it was just an odd night?
Yeah, I mean, the football sets the tone, and the football wasn't great, right? So I think it's what's expected when a team comes in and kind of punches you in the mouth. Your crowd's going to be quiet, and with the exception of those few minutes where Utah was within a touchdown and got the ball back, the fans actually got really, really loud. That was a fun little atmosphere for a few minutes there. But yeah, the rest of the night, Spence, it felt flat. It felt like there wasn't a lot of urgency, and it just felt like the vibes were not great all day long for the Utes. And I don't know where that necessarily comes from within the locker room, but you definitely felt it outside of the locker room, in the stands, on the sideline. It was something that was pretty palpable, but it's one game. And as we have learned with Utah's 2 Rose Bowl seasons, 2 Pac-12 title seasons, you can recover from that, and you can do so if you have the personnel there. So we'll talk about this with some perspective. We have our Big 12 power rankings today as well, so a lot to get to, and a lot of football to get to from the weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Busy show today. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. We'll bring in Brian Jeffries right off the top to talk some Utah, Arizona. But before we get to Brian, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too, it's Standard Restaurant Supplies. Standard Restaurant Supplies, your tailgate headquarters. Anything you need for your tailgate, they've got it. Check them out at 3500 Southwest Temple and online at standardrestaurant.com. On a Monday afternoon, it's time now for your opening tip. So Utah football over the weekend got trounced pretty good. Arizona for the second straight year. Arizona gets the better of the University of Utah, 23-10, the final. We'll get into it. It's going to be kind of a common theme on the show today all day long. We've got a bunch of guests we're going to talk about Utah football with, and we're going to talk about the game on Saturday. We're going to talk about the feeling in the community, and we're going to talk about what's next for Utah football. Now, obviously, all is not lost. Nobody that covers the Big 12 this year believed anybody was going to go undefeated. On this show, it means the Bill O'Reilly mullet watch has come to an end, and that's very sad because whenever I was in a bad mood over the past couple of months, I pictured Bill calling games in a mullet, and it made me very happy, so now I'm back to being sad. But anyway, moving on. So, look, the nuts and bolts of the game we'll get into throughout the course of the show. Ultimately, topically, right now, it's really undeniable to start the show off and do this segment with anything other than what's happening at the quarterback position with the University of Utah right now. So before I get into this, I will direct you to our buddy Chris Kamrani's piece on Cam Rising. And CK, I'll pull up the date. He released it a few months back now. And Chris is one of the best there is. That's why we utilize him on the show. And I always say rule number 1, read Chris Kamrani. And he released it September the 19th, so it's a little dated. Woo! Cough button right off the top. But Chris had incredible access to Cam, to Cam's parents, to Cam's inner circle, to Cam's doctor, Dr. Neil Trash. And really, I don't want to say for the first time, because I'll hearken back to last year where, and look, I've seen your direct messages, I've seen your emails, and I'm on social media. My DMs are open. If you guys want to DM me, that's fine. I don't look at mentions because the internet is where cowards go to feel brave. So if you want to ask questions, if you want to be decent, I do interact with people on my Instagram and Twitter DMs. And by the time I got home from the game, my son and I walked from the stadium back to the house. I had probably 25 or 30 direct messages. And it was all about the same thing. It wasn't about the game. It was all about Cam. It was all about the quarterback position. It was about the messaging. It was about what's going on exactly. But before you guys start running downtown with your pitchforks, I would encourage you to read what Chris wrote about Cam. And it was the second time where I felt Cameron was being very honest and vulnerable because, quite frankly, he is asked to walk a line up there. The messaging is not up to Cam Rising. So you've got to stop using your pitchforks to go after Cam for the messaging. He's not the one dictating the way they're handling this in meetings, okay? It's the coaching staff. I'm sure Mark Harlan has a say in this as the AD, but my guess is it's Kyle, it's Andy, it's Morgan, it's the coaches, and Cameron is doing what Cameron is being asked to do. If you think this is on him, I feel like that's misguided, and I'm going to tell you why. So last year, it was the same deal, man, and you guys know it. Based off of the information I had about his knee, I felt like I was the only one in the market saying there's no way he's ready right away. There's no chance he's playing against Florida. No way he's ready for week 1. And honestly, I thought they might hold him out for non-con and then get ready for conference play in the Pac-12. But no part of me thought he was going to be ready right away, even though that's what we were being told. And then you guys know the deal. Every single week, it's like he's close, he's going to be available. They would dress him, he would warm up, and he wouldn't play. And people would be upset. Now, it's not Cam's fault that they're not disseminating information, but he came on Bill's show last year, and it was as downtrodden as I'd ever heard Cam, who's a very happy kid. He's a very uplifting, gregarious, energetic person. And it was really, and I don't know if this was a result of pushback he was getting from the community. I don't know if this pushback he was getting from people that are paying him NIL money. And I know there's an element of that people are really frustrated with right now. I don't know what motivated Cameron to go on Bill's show and essentially give a bit of a mea culpa for what's going on. He explained exactly what happened with his knee. And Dr. Neil Atrash and Chris Comrani in his piece, they go through the process of just how bad that injury was. And I'm the one that got the information after 3 or 4 weeks that he wasn't playing all year. You people were mad at me. I heard from you, but it was right. And there was this idea that, the community was being lied to by the football program in order for Cam to just continue to maintain the ability to cash NIL checks and Brand Keithy as well. I don't buy any of that. Like, if your take on this is Cam is lying and he's really healthy and not playing, I would love to hear what you have to say about vaccines. Like, that's not the deal here. The kid is hurt. Okay, so after the interview with Bill last year, after CK's piece in September, my heart just went out to him. And honestly, this might be unpopular on a Monday after a bad loss here in Salt Lake where everybody seems to be really frustrated. My heart still goes out to the kid. I feel bad for Cam. Guys, he's hurt. He is, okay? There's no other way around that. And if you read Chris's piece, Cam talks a lot about simply how much competition means to him and how much of his life is consumed by being a football player. I mean, if you've ever played a sport throughout the course of growing up and you love it and it's like your main thing, it's going to permeate into your identity a little bit. And if you've ever played it up until college and you're being paid for it, it becomes who you are. So when it's taken away from you, it's a really tough thing. Like Cam talked about being bummed out. He didn't want to leave the house. He was stocking up his DoorDash bill. I mean, he didn't want to go anywhere. So when it comes to what's happening this year, here's what I'll say. I completely understand the people who I hear from who say, I'm just over the whole thing. That's fine. The messaging has been inconsistent. It clearly is not transparent. Now, side note, it doesn't have to be. As I talked about last week, until Kyle gets the email from Brett Yormark in the Big 12 and says, guys, we're going the way of the SEC. We're reporting injuries Thursday or Friday prior to game weekend. This is the deal. And it's going to be the deal. It always has been the deal. And it will continue to be the deal moving forward. Now, it's fair to ask a few things. It's fair to ask that if Cameron was cleared to play and dressed and ready to be a backup available if Isaac went down, why isn't he cleared to be a starter? That's a fair question that I saw over the weekend that I think is really fair. What I think is really unfair are the cheap shots at Cam himself, saying he's sandbagging it, he's soft, he's not fulfilling his obligation as a paid employee of the institution. Those are the takes that I'm just not here for because I think they're misguided. I think they're unfair. I feel bad for Cam. I felt bad for him last year. I feel bad for him this year. If he was healthy, he would be playing because he's not preserving himself for the NFL. That's another thing that I think we need to dispel. If there was a real, legitimate, not guarantee, none of these guys have guarantees, but if the feedback that Cam and his people received from scouts were like, yeah, if you go, you're going to have a shot. Even if you're not healthy, a team's going to sign you and be patient with you and develop. He'd be gone already. He'd be in the NFL. Like this was a matter of a 25-year-old looking at his options and probably realizing pro football is not a super realistic situation. It's not impossible. Okay, we've seen quarterbacks with less talent make it in the NFL. I don't know that he's an NFL guy. I look around at all the mocks. We have scouts on the show. It's split as to whether or not he even has a chance. So, look, think back to when you were 25 or when you were about to finish school. If somebody gave you the option of, hey, go hit the job market, congrats on your econ degree, see what you can lock down in the next few weeks, or come back to school for another year, make $1 million and do what you've been doing, you'd go back to school for another year, you'd make $1 million. Cameron is making more money than what he could possibly be doing if he wasn't playing football at the University of Utah. So the whole he's saving himself for the pros, not here for it either. Don't think that's a thing. To me, this is a bottom line situation. Cam is hurt, and when he's healthy, he's going to play. But it's also fair to say, is the messaging really something that's fair to Cam himself? Because I don't think he enjoys all this conversation and all this pressure. Is it really a competitive advantage to hold back injuries? Jim Harbaugh, for years, has kind of laughed at that notion. That's why he reports injuries. He reported injuries in college. Obviously, in the pros, you have to. But Harbaugh has always kind of laughed at the notion that it really is a competitive advantage. Now, again, if Kyle thinks it is, he's going to do it. And Kyle deserves, of course, the benefit of the doubt. He has built-in equity. But the messaging has started to wear very thin on the community. I think the messaging has started to wear very thin on Cam himself. And I think it's probably fair to say everyone up there, good, smart, intelligent, capable people up there, might need to rethink about the way they've handled the entire situation with the quarterback stuff. If he doesn't play after the bye, Utes on a bye, and then they're back in action next week, taking on Arizona State on the road. If he doesn't play at Arizona State, is it time to just say, all right, Isaac's our future. Let's go ahead and give him the reps with the ones. Is it time to turn the page if he's not available, for Arizona State? I don't have the answers, guys. The coaches are the ones that will be making those decisions, and thank goodness, because obviously they're very capable. But ultimately, you got once, and if it's going to be Isaac under center all year long, with what we've seen from the offense, all due respect to Isaac, who's an 18-year-old who just enrolled in April, do you still think the Big 12 championship is on the table? I've said from the start, I'm not alone. Most people agree. For Utah to win the Big 12, they need Cam under center. But they also need production and capable production from their backup quarterback in a way they didn't have last year, because who is really confident that even if Cam rolls back against Arizona State, he'll stay healthy for the final 7-8 games of the season? They're going to need more from Isaac. But in the meantime, I think everyone's just really anxious to either have Cam back, figure out a different way to go about this messaging, or turn the page and say, all right, Isaac, you're both the present and the future. We'll see how it plays out. All right, coming up on the other side, we will talk Utah, Arizona with Brian Jeffries, who's the play-by-play voice of the Wildcats. Josh Furlong is our guest after that from KSL. We'll give you our Big 12 power rankings, Utah falling, BYU rising. Logan Cooley from the Utah Hockey Club, and then Sarah Todd from the Deseret News. I want to tell you about my friends at Lifestyle Men's Health. Check out their website. It's lifestylemensclinic.com. So lifestylemensclinic.com. Phone number is 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. They've got a special going on. It's 50% off the new clients. It's a new client special. You get 50% off for erectile dysfunction treatments. They're regenerative treatments. You can also do testosterone replacement therapy, which I've done for a year. It's made a massive difference in my life. I would definitely call and check that out if you're a man in your mid-40s. Also, Vitality Peptides. I've been using that for about three months now, and they also make a big difference with energy, sleep, and focus. So give them a call at 385-458-9203 or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Brian Jeffries is our guest coming up next right here on ESPN 700. So if we're going to do Billy Joel, you and I need to chat because I'm quite sure with you being a young and you being a Summit County boy, your Billy Joel knowledge probably needs a little encouragement and a little, brushing up. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
fair?
this is fair. The only time I really have heard Billy Joel is parents a little bit, but then you a little, and old Brayton Covey, our Billy Joel
Yes.
guy. So
Okay. Well, Billy Joel is coming to Rice Eccles Stadium. Billy Joel has like a bunch of awesome albums and a bunch of horrible albums and horrible songs. That doesn't make him unique.
okay.
Well, let's talk about it. But let's talk football. Brian Jeffries, the play-by-play voice of the Arizona Wildcats on a Monday. Mr. Jeffries, how are you, sir?
Very good. Glass Houses. Is that the album you're thinking of?
Glass Houses. Good pull. So may I presume that you are a fan of Billy Joel?
I'm not a diehard guy. I'm not going to, run to his concert at the drop of the hat. But I guess I kind of was growing up in his era, so I'm certainly familiar with his music. And before I got into sports broadcasting, I'll admit to you that I was a rock and roll DJ, and so I probably played some of his records.
Oh,
maybe
very
too
nice.
many times.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I always love to hear the journey of how people ended up where they did. And obviously now you have been doing this for a long time with University of Arizona. Brian, what stood out most to you? Let's start macro level. 30,000-foot view, Arizona 23, Utah 10. What were your main takeaways?
Well, I think just the way the Wildcats attacked the game. If you look back at their season so far, they have been kind of up and down. I mean, they had a great offensive game plan against New Mexico in their opener. Defense didn't look very good. Second game, defense looked great. Offense kind of sputtered. Third game, they scored on their opening drive at Kansas State. They were down by 7 early third quarter, and then everything kind of fell apart from there. They had the bye week to try and fix some things, and I think the biggest question was, would they come out and attack Utah? Because, as you guys know, that's how the Utes play. I mean, they're a very attacking team, and Arizona had to stand up to that. And so I think that's the first thing that I noticed early on in that game, that on both sides of the ball, Arizona was very aggressive, and that's something they needed to do. If they had any chance to win, they had to do that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I thought they had a chance to win, but I knew they had to come out and play a very aggressive football if they were going to have any chance of winning, and that's what they did, like you said, from high up.
I wonder around here, and this won't be a surprise, I mean, the biggest topic of conversation is who the quarterback is going to be for the Utes. And week in and week out, you remember, it was the same thing last year where the messaging from the team was it's going to be Cam, he's close, it's game time, and then it wasn't. And this year they've got a good young backup in Isaac Wilson who's looked pretty good. He's looked better than the situation a year ago that ultimately led to a lot of chaos around here. I wonder, Brian, what was the conversation last week leading up to the game about who Arizona, generally speaking, was preparing for to see under center for Utah?
Well, I can't take you inside the coach's room. I can tell you that they probably did the politically correct thing, saying that they would expect either one of them, had to be prepared for either one of them. I know that Brent Brennan talked about the experience factor of Cam over Isaac Wilson. That would be a big factor if he played. I think most of the talk was that Utah really didn't change its offense a lot depending on which quarterback they had. Other than the experience factor, it looked just on game film that they were running basically the same plays, and so you had to be prepared more for Utah's running attack, which is, as you know, always been the strength of that team, as opposed to who the quarterback might be. Now, the previous two games for Arizona, they had faced a running quarterback. And I guess the one thing going into the game up in Salt Lake City, the thought was that Isaac Wilson is not going to run. And if Cam Rising is playing, he's not going to run because they just didn't want to afford any injuries there. And so I can't tell you what the Arizona defensive coaches thought. If they were preparing for the fact that, hey, whoever Utah starts, they're probably not going to be a guy that's going to run a lot. And maybe they could game plan that way. But I don't think there was any thought, at least from the Arizona camp, one way or another as to who was going to start in that game and play the game.
So watching the K-State game, in Kansas State, Utah, similar type programs as far as how they want to play, it felt, Brian, that Arizona just had a difficult time keeping up with the physicality of K-State, which I think led to a lot of people around here being pretty confident because Utah is a very physical football team. But for me, it didn't look like Arizona was concerned with the physicality of Utah at all. It didn't seem like they were taken back by it. Didn't seem like they were intimidated by it. In fact, oftentimes it seemed like they were the ones bringing the physicality to a Ute team, where it's usually the other way around more often than not. What do you attribute the shift to? I mean, there was a bye between K-State and Utah, but K-State, physical team. Arizona had a tough time holding up to that physicality. Utah, physical team, didn't seem to faze them. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the bye week certainly helped. You have a chance to sit back and look at some game film, maybe a little more than you do during a week, because you're normally just preparing for your next opponent. So there was also some healthier guys. Everybody was not everybody, but guys get banged up, not major injuries, and they used that bye week, I think, to their advantage. And even though it's a new coaching staff at Arizona, if you go back to last year's Arizona-Utah game here in Tucson, I think that's really kind of the turning point for Arizona in that game, that they were able to stand up to Utah's physicality. And so maybe the returning guys, maybe they used some of that. I know I asked the coaches, I said, even though you weren't on the staff a year ago, did you look back at last year's game film to try and draw anything from that? And they admitted they did, but again, they were looking more at what Utah had done earlier this season. So it's a combination of things, and maybe the Arizona players just kind of figured out that, hey, if we're going to win, we have to be more physical, and they certainly went out and did that, and we'll see if they can continue it as the season goes on.
How obviously all of us around here are very impressed with the job Jed Fish did, and I guess Washington took note, and ultimately he left. How just generally speaking, I think everybody was expecting Brian, kind of a mass exodus to follow Jed up to Washington. How injured ultimately, how hurt as far as the personnel goes, was the program as a result of the coaching change? And, ultimately, did it feel like more guys stuck around than you were expecting, or did the amount of players who decided to bounce after losing their coach kind of fall in line with what you were expecting?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. I think more guys stayed than probably, at least if you look at the media going into it, or the social media. I think after Jed left last year, they expected more to go, and Jed made a concerted effort to try and get more guys to go to Washington. Arizona lost Jonah Coleman, who was their best running back, and now he's the best running back at Washington. Season's Price Sock also went to Washington. I don't know how much he's played yet. He's a defensive back. Maybe the bigger loss than Coleman was Bill Norton, who left to go to Texas, and he was a defensive lineman at Arizona, and that kind of wiped out Arizona's defensive front. They already had some guys graduating, but the fact that they were able to keep Noah Fafita, Teteroa McMillan, etc., Takario Davis, those three guys, Kean Burnett, I'm thinking of guys that I know Washington really wanted. But those guys all had something in common. They call it the Band of the Brotherhood, and they decided that they had committed to Arizona. They were committed to themselves. They have a different outlook on things. They're not all just looking for the NIL money, and so they made the decision after Jed left that no, they were going to stick together, and that probably kept some other guys. I mentioned some of them. There's some other guys probably that were on the fence, and I think because the names I mentioned there were the leaders of the team, that because they were going to stay, the other guys said, okay, we're going to stay with you. And that was big. Obviously, for Arizona to have any chance to continue their success this season, they had to keep that core group together, and they have. And, like I said, if they continue to play well, I think it's going to bode well for the team and their one-loss record as the season goes on.
So we've seen Noah Fafita for a while make plays. It didn't surprise anybody around here who's watched this young man do what he did on Saturday night at Rice-Eccles Stadium. First couple of games, it didn't look the way that most were expecting. And I think it's safe to say, I'll speak for myself, I just thought that Noah would follow Jed up to Washington as well. But you kept your quarterback, and Saturday night, Ute fans saw firsthand what makes him special. Brian, what stands out most about this young player as far as the way he's grown? And give me your thoughts on what he did Saturday night against a really good defense.
Yeah, he is a very, very grounded young man. And if you ever get a chance just to sit, and even if you just listen to him, you don't even have to talk to him, just listen to him. I mean, he's just somebody that, takes it personally. He's talked over the first three games that he wasn't playing as well as he knew he could, and he didn't blame anybody but himself. So we'll go back to that bye week and say, okay, what was he going to do to be better? And I think He just got back some of the rhythm that he had before. I'll tell you another little, just inside part of this whole thing. And did it have any effect on Saturday? I don't know, but Arizona changed their offensive coordinator on Saturday. And Dino Babers had called plays for the first 3 games, and he turned it over to Matt Adkins, who had been their passing game coordinator. And Brent Brennan had said that that was kind of the plan as they were working. They wanted some of the younger coaches to start moving into roles like that. And we just saw some different play calling in terms of how quickly they were able to get their plays underway. I think if you went back and look at the game film from Arizona's first 3 games, some of their plays were very slow developing, and they needed to get back because Noah was at his best last year when it was a very quick offense. I'm talking snap to throw, snap to handoff. And so they went back to some of those things Saturday, and I think that helped him because that's more the style of play that he likes to have going for him. So he's a great young man. He's got a tremendous family, and he's got some roots there in Utah as well. And so there's a lot of pride for him, I think, going into that game where he wanted to get back to what he does best.
Curious to get the take of the play-by-play voice about the environment in the stadium. We've talked about this throughout the course of the show. This is a stadium, Rice-Eccles Stadium, with a reputation for feeling and sounding a way that it just didn't on Saturday night. And, of course, football has to lead the way. It's easy to cheer for a team when they're playing well and winning. But juxtaposed to your past Rice-Eccles experiences, I wonder what you would have to say on kind of the atmosphere that everybody was experiencing on Saturday night, Brian.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row, 2 games in a row now, Arizona's faced kind of that similar atmosphere. When we were back in Manhattan, Kansas, they pride themselves the same way. They put 51,000 in their stadium, and they're very loud, very supportive of their team. And so Arizona knew what to expect going to Salt Lake City. They'd just gone through it. And early on, it was what I'd experienced before going up to Rice-Eccles. I think probably, and I'm just, again, I can't get into the minds of the fans, but when Arizona had that halftime lead, I kind of sensed that there was some worry. I was thinking, well, there's still another half of football. Utah's not going to lay down after this. The Utes are going to come out. We figured they'd come out fired up for that third quarter, and when they got within 16-10, it looked the crowd kind of got it back again. But I understand when you're used to winning at home, and probably, and you guys would know better than me, you probably don't trail a whole lot at home, at least into the second half, and you kind of sense then that was something new for the Utah fans. And I'll just add this, that, Brent Brennan has talked a lot. If Arizona wants to, get back to anything like Utah's got going, Arizona's got to pack its stadium, and we've got Texas Tech coming this week, so we'll see how that works out.
I wonder, since you're one of our friends that sits at the former Pac-12, now Big 12 lunch table, there's only a few of us, Brian, all of us that are kind of experiencing this for the first time. What have been your impressions of this new conference experience juxtaposed to what we're all used to as long-term members of the Pac-12?
I mean, just personally, it's different because, if you were around the Pac-12 for a long time and you play your non-conference games, and you get into the conference schedule, and even though players change and you might have coaching changes, you always had a good feel for the opponent. You just felt like, okay, and I felt that way going up to Salt Lake City. It was like, oh, this feels great. We're going back to playing a team that you know something about, you've got some history with, you've been to the stadium before. And I don't take this the wrong way, but it was kind of warm and fuzzy. I thought, wow, this is neat. Even though the Kansas State game was not a conference game, it was still a Big 12 opponent, brand new. And now this week, Arizona's got a brand new opponent in Texas Tech. And so, to me, just from a personal end, it's like getting used to all these new rivalries now. And I grew up in the Pac-10 and then the Pac-12, and it's been disappointing. I hated to see the conference come to an end, and I'm still adjusting to it. So I guess let's wait and see how it works out. But it isn't the same feeling, and that's why I said it was kind of fun going to Salt Lake because you knew what you were getting into.
All right, Brian, before I set you loose, appreciate the time on this Monday. I don't think anybody believes that there will be an undefeated Big 12 team at the end, whether overall or in conference. It's just it seems so far that this conference is in a similar spot to where the Pac-12 was at times, where there are a lot of teams that are very close and maybe kind of cannibalize themselves a little bit. Who do you believe? And of course, Arizona's on the list because they're undefeated as of now. But how many teams do you think realistically can actually win this conference as of today?
Wow. I agree with you. I think the balance in this conference is pretty good. I mean, there's some teams at the bottom. You know, Houston doesn't look very good right now. But then you take a look at a lot of the other clubs. I don't know if you can discount anybody. I haven't seen everybody yet play. I mean, obviously BYU's off to a great start. Nobody expected this from them. So are they the favorite? I don't know. I mean, Kansas State looked great until, a week ago or so when they went to Provo, and Oklahoma State looked really good until Utah went and beat them, and Utah looked great until Arizona. You could take half the conference right now and probably throw them in the same bucket and pull out a name, and that team might win it. So I can't give you. I mean, Iowa State right now, maybe it's Iowa State, BYU. Maybe those are the two best teams, but I just agree with you. I think there's too much balance in this league. I think there's going to be a lot of teams, beating up on each other, and it's going to hopefully, just for the excitement, I guess, of the conference, come down to the last couple of weeks of the season.
Thank you, sir, for the time. Hope you had a great trip out here to Salt Lake. Enjoy the rest of the season. We'd love to do it again soon. Thanks, Brian.
Glad to. We'll see you guys.
Brian Jeffries, the play-by-play voice of the Arizona Wildcats, has been for a long time. @CatsPBP on Twitter is where you find him. So, Utah Falls. Over the weekend, Rice-Eccles Stadium, not accustomed to really feeling that way in the stadium when it came to the atmosphere. 23-10 is the final score. Porter, give me you were at the game. I went to the game with my son. You were at the game, and you made a good point earlier. Like, you're not going to show up to a stadium and just simply be loud when there's not a lot to get excited about. And I couldn't ultimately find a solid, finite definition as to what the adjective I was looking for to describe the stadium. Part of it was a little docile. Part of it was a little anxious. At the end, part of it was a little sad. But away from the game and over to the atmosphere a little bit, how would you describe what I perceive to be a really odd night at Rice-Eccles Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there. It was a little awkward, a little anxious feeling in the stadium for much of the night. Now, part of that, of course, has to do with everyone kind of waiting at the edge of their seats to see if Cam Rising trots out there. And then, 40 or so thousand watch him warm up and watch him go through warm-ups and zip the ball around. And then, once again, Isaac Wilson trots out and is your starter. And then, Spence, Isaac turns the ball over. Utah doesn't get anything going offensively. And usually in those circumstances, you think of a USC a few years ago when Utah was down 14-0, right? Games like that where your defense then gets you back in the ball game, and it gets the crowd back in the ball game as well. Jalen Johnson had a big interception. Chase Hansen had a forced turnover, and Utah got the crowd back into the game, and then they got back into the game. It never happened on Saturday. It wasn't only the lackluster offense. It was the real reason for what I feel is the energy for historically for that stadium is defense. It's the third down jump. It's it's Utah's calling card, and even that didn't really show up in early parts on Saturday, and I think that played into it. Of course, the questions around Cam Rising absolutely did as well.
Are you going to get excited about the Mets? Am I going to have to? What am I going to have to? Am I going to have to give you the Mets lecture again this year?
Dude, the last couple hours have been. I don't know if you watched that game.
I saw bits and pieces. I knew what was at stake. I just can't believe that they're doing the Mets thing again, and I just don't want you to fall.
And as dramatic as possible too.
Yes, of course.
Score like 6 runs in the eighth inning, and then almost give it up, and then win. Yeah, I got actually really excited this afternoon watching some pretty much postseason baseball, as this is elimination stuff.
Okay. Well, I don't want you to be sad, pal.
I will be.
I know. I have a lot of Met fans.
Mm-hmm.
I chose the right side of history to be a Yankee fan, but I have a lot of buddies that love the Mets, and it's the same thing every year. So I just don't want you to fall for it.
A Mets fan, I deserved the win today after what you saw, I'm sure, on Friday with our Hokies.
Yes, for sure. All right, before we catch a break, for about a year now, I have been utilizing testosterone replacement therapy. Now, I had some friends that did it before I did, and I was always skeptical. I didn't want to, give myself a shot, every week. Didn't know how expensive it was. Didn't want my, body to need it, right? You want to produce your own testosterone. But ultimately, I went in and saw Dr. Angela Peterson at Lifestyle Men's Health, and she walked me through the benefits of it. And she said, once we get your levels to a certain place, we're going to ease back on them, and you don't have to take this forever. But if you're a man in your mid-40s and you find yourself being a little bit fatigued, you wake up with brain fog, and maybe you're not sleeping well, I can just tell you what testosterone therapy has done for me. I've lost about, 9 pounds. I didn't need to lose a lot of weight, but I'm down to my preferred weight. The workouts are the number one thing. If you find yourself waking up and going, I can't make it today, can't make it to the gym, I know I should, but I just can't. I wake up every day, I'm like excited to go because the workouts are more energetic. I can tell with my body it's feeling and looking better, and it has taken about a year, but the worst time to start is never. The best time to start is now. Best time to start is a year ago, but second best time to start is now. So I can't really talk to many of the other products they have, but what I can tell you is that if you're a guy my age and you're looking for better energy, you want to lose a little weight, you want to get in better shape, testosterone therapy combined with Vitality Peptides have made a huge difference for me. Lifestyle Men's Health, Lifestyle Men's Clinic right now has a new client special where you do get 50% off for ED treatments if you need that type of situation to be rectified. I didn't mean to do that. Don't send emails. Erectile dysfunction, regenerative treatments, testosterone replacement therapy, weight loss, Vitality Peptides, 50% off ED treatments now. Give them a call at 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203 or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Josh Furlong is our guest. Coming up next, right here on ESPN 700. No, it's not. I didn't choose this song. You're choosing to be a troublemaker on a Monday. All I said was let's get some REM in on a Monday. This feels like you're trolling Utah fans. I'm not going to lie.
A little bit.
All right.
A little bit. But to be fair, I would say there's a percentage of Utah fans that, probably should, get a little poke in this regard. Listen, this is a team that lost 2 games, lost to BYU early in the year, and then ended up in Pasadena. This is a team that lost a game early in the year when they first won the Pac-12 championship. You can't go undefeated every time. You haven't gone undefeated since 2008. It's not going to happen in the Big 12. So, we'll move on. It's not the end of the world.
Josh, on a scale of 1 to 10, is it the end of the world as we know it, or should we feel fine?
Yeah, I don't think we should even talk about it anymore. I mean, the end of the world's here. Utah football's done. Cash the program in. We're done.
Oh, man. Well, it was a good run. It was a good run we all had. On a serious note, Josh Furlong's our guest, our buddy from KSL. Let's start with big picture takeaways. Saturday night was weird. I was there with my son. I don't remember feeling the stadium that docile, I guess. I don't know what else to say. But Josh Furlong take. Utah loses to Arizona Saturday night.
I think the initial reaction is it's a disappointment, right? I mean, you come into the game thinking that the way Arizona has played and the roster that they have, that Utah should come in there and absolutely handle their business. And it just didn't feel that way, right? And I mean, I think it was one of those games where it never really kind of got going, right? Like there was a lot of moments where Utah seemed like, okay, this is going well, everything's going the way that we want it to, and then just you're left with 0 points, and you kind of figured that they were going to get something going eventually, and it just never came. So, I understand like the doom and gloom right now. I get that this one feels really tough, especially given the preseason expectations that Utah had for itself and from the media and everybody else. But I think there's still everything on the table. I mean, this is a conference that I don't think anybody runs the table, and maybe somebody does. But either way, I mean, if Utah can play the way that we think they can, and I still think there's a lot of potential for this team, everything's fine. It's just a setback. If anything, it makes you a little bit more hungry, a little bit more humble, allows you to kind of get to work and focus on the things that have been plaguing Utah all year.
All right, so we have to talk about it. I know I don't love the topic, but that's the thing that as far as feedback from the community, listeners, friends, what have you, former buddies that I went to college with, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback position. Everybody wants to talk about Cam. Everybody wants to talk about the information, how it's disseminated, the lack of transparency that really feels reminiscent of what happened last year, where every week it was, okay, he's closer. Okay, he's really close. He's almost there. He's warming up. He's dressed, and then he's not playing. And it's the same thing here so far. Now, my bottom line is my heart goes out to the kid. It did last year when he hopped on Bill's show to really outline just how badly injured he was. And Chris Comrani wrote a piece he released in September 19th, so just a few weeks ago, where he had access to Cam, he had access to the family, and access to Dr. Neil Atrash, the doctor. And Cam, to me, came away as the sympathetic figure. I believe he's hurt, Josh, and I believe he'll play when he's healthy. Like, if the take is he's saving himself for pro football, like, what do you think about vaccines? I don't want to hear your opinion. It's the wrong side to be on. But I also understand how the lack of transparency and the way that the information is disseminated is kind of getting old for a lot of people around here. Give me your take on this before we move on to other things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm as frustrated as everybody, right? I mean, I don't love the situation that we're in where we're trying to have to dodge and guess and do all these different things to try to figure out if Cam Rising is going to play. I think now that we're in the NIL era where players are getting paid, there should be more standardized approaches to these injury reports, right? Because at the end of the day, Cam's not the one out there speaking for himself. You've got Kyle Whittingham and the Utah football program speaking for him, and I guess they should be speaking for him, and nobody's saying it. And so then everybody's left to kind of guess what is happening. You haven't even really heard the extent of his injury. We know it's a finger injury, and, us as media, we've heard different things about it and kind of there. But now it's being turned and twisted onto Cam Rising, where he's looked like some guy that's just cashing the check, sitting on the sidelines. They're picking apart his attitude on the sidelines. Oh, no, he's laughing and having fun. How dare this kid have fun and cash the paycheck? He should be out there on the field toughing it out with everybody else. It's just it's a weird world that we're in that sense where it's kind of tough, right? But I kind of go back to it. Like, you can't have it both ways where everybody's complaining about Cam being too competitive and trying to make the extra play on the field and getting hurt, and then say that he's not competitive because he doesn't want to play a game. I honestly think that Cam is trying his best to be on the field, but when you're not feeling 100% and your hand isn't there, it's your throwing hand, there's not much you can do, right? Like, you become a vulnerability. And yes, you can say, oh, well, Isaac Wilson has thrown these many interceptions. I don't care. Like, I think when you're sitting there as a quarterback, you want to play your best, and it becomes a vulnerability if you don't have any zip on that ball, right? That opens yourself up to interceptions. You open yourself up to a team element that's not going to work, and then what are you going to do? Now you're blamed again because you suck as a quarterback. So I think that we're in the era now where we honestly have to have some sort of injury reports to make sure that it protects them, it protects the players, it protects everybody and allows us to be able to have this information. At the end of the day, the program doesn't owe it to the fans. My job is to try to find that information and give it to the fans. But, there should be, honestly, something to at least give an understanding of what it is. I just think at the end of the day, this is a combination of everything that's happened last year mixed with this year, and it's just an unfortunate situation for Cam.
I'm going to stay in this space for a moment because at least the information I have, and I could be wrong, is that Cam has been cleared medically for 2 weeks, and they've gone through warm-ups, and during the 2 weeks in practice, both quarterbacks have received reps with the ones, and then prior to the game, they've decided that it's going to be Isaac and not Cam. Now, there was a report on the broadcast that Coach Witt told the broadcasters he told the team on Friday night that they were going with Isaac. And then after the game, Coach Witt talks about how it was kind of a game-time decision. So, to me, ultimately, this does come down to what's fair to the player. But I do think there is an element of, is this really fair to everybody involved? And I'm not the media guy that says, I deserve this. This is more like the community, the fans, the people that are invested into your program, and then Cameron himself, because to your point, there's no way Cam is the one deciding how this communication structure is going to play out. It's not on him. And so for the fan base, the portion of the fan base that is piling on Cameron, cut it out. Give it a rest. It's not on him. What would you perceive to be a cleaner way to go about this to be more fair to the player and more fair to the community?
Yeah, I don't know that there's an easy way about this, right? I do think there should be some sort of element where the coach does say what type of injury it is, right? And maybe we get an estimated timeline. I still don't know that that's going to appease everybody, because then if it goes beyond the timeline, then people are saying he's milking it. I don't know that there's elements there that anything is going to change, right? You see that in the NFL, guys are sitting out. I remember there was a player last year, it might have been on the Jets, I can't remember, where, he had to address this because, people thought that he was sitting out. These are always going to exist. But I think the more forthcoming that you can be with the fan base, which is the people that you should be respecting at the end of the day. You're right. As media members, it's not about me. And if anything, it's about giving us the information so that we can disseminate that to the people. That's our job, right? It's not for me to get clicks. It's not for me to do that. My job at the end of the day is to be the middleman between Utah and the fans. And so when you're not giving that information to us, then it's harder for the fans to get that. And so to me, there has to just be some level of element where you're giving the fans an understanding of what is going on. Right now, there's never been an official word of what has even happened to Cam other than he hurt his fingers. We don't know if they were officially dislocated. We don't know that there was a cut. I mean, I know these things, but we have to speak to those things because we have to talk to sources. And that's fine and dandy, and that's our job. But at the end of the day, Utah needs to come up with something, and I'm not just saying Utah, this is college sports in general, needs to come up with something to give an idea of what it is. Everybody knows he's hurt. It's not like it did anything to Arizona to say, okay, we don't think Cam's going to play. Oh, no, now what are we going to do? They know. It's there. So you've got to be able to come up with something to appease the fans, even if it's just a little bit. I just think, most of the time this isn't going to be a problem. It's just this year, and based on how it all was done last year, has just got people kind of tired, and they're just tired of the games. And I think that's kind of where we're at.
What's your opinion on whether or not withholding injuries is really a competitive advantage, namely one like this? Jim Harbaugh for years laughed at that notion, outwardly mocked it, and he reported whether he had to or not. He would give his press conference. He'd say, we're going, in this direction. The court, QB1's down. We're without this player. He always kind of scoffed at the notion that holding injuries back from public information and other teams is really a competitive advantage, but it feels like Coach Witt disagrees. What do you think? Is it really that much of a competitive advantage if, on the other side of it, it seems to be causing so much consistent collateral damage to this young man week in and week out?
Yeah, to me, I don't think it's worth it in the end. The gamesmanship of it is worth it. At the end of the day, barring maybe a few players, and maybe the quarterback is that, but barring a few players, like I don't know that it does anything, right? A team is going to go into that week preparing for both of those guys, right? They're going to prepare for Cam Rising, they're going to prepare for Isaac Wilson. I don't know, outside of Cam obviously having a lot more experience in doing that, that it really changes your game plan a ton. Yeah, maybe you load the box a little bit more, do different things that way if it's Isaac going. But I don't know that it really changes a ton, right? And I'm not a coach. Like I'm not going to pretend that I understand the ins and outs of that and what holding that back. To me, like having the right signals and having those types of things is far more, paramount to what the team needs than withholding whether Cam Rising is playing or Karene Reed is playing. Like, yeah, those players are important and you need to be able to have them. But at the end of the day, once that whistle's blown and you're out on the field, it's real quick to find out that player's not there. And the best coaches are going to find ways to scheme against that in the game, and that's just the nature of it. So to me, it doesn't really seem like an advantage. The NFL has to give it out, and they still manage to do it every single week. So I don't know that there's really that much of an advantage.
I'm going to throw one more thing here at you that was thrown at me, and I honestly don't know if anything's there. But I had a acquaintance of mine who went to the game with his family, sent me a message after the game, and he surmises that one of the reasons Utah football does not want to tell you that Cameron is not playing is to make sure that everybody goes to the game. Do you really think a large portion of the fan base would not go to the game if they knew beforehand that Cam wasn't under center? I have a hard time getting there, Josh. I was just curious to what your take is.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think there's a large portion of the fan base that wouldn't come. I think the ones that are coming are dedicated. They're excited no matter who shows up on the field. If that was the case, fans wouldn't show up last year when Bryson Barnes was starting and they knew he was starting, right? Like there was more vitriol and hatred towards that. So I don't buy it. I think it's really just Kyle trying to keep control, and it's not just Kyle; it's every coach out there. But I think they just want control, and that's the end of it.
All right, final thing here, and I'm quite sure I know what you're going to say, but I've got to ask you just to ask, where are we at with the progress? Are you hearing that we should expect Cameron against Arizona State after the bye week, or is it just like, hey, day by day, game time decision? We'll all find out after kick.
Yeah, I think there really is the true progress being made. I don't know that it was quite the game time decision that they said. I think they knew beforehand. But with the week this week and the next week, I would be very surprised if he doesn't play against Arizona State. I think you could see him being a little bit more sure of himself when he was in warm-ups on Saturday. He looked like he had a little bit more zip to it. So if he's making the necessary steps over these next 2 weeks, I have to believe that he's ready for Arizona State. Now, if he's not, then I think you've got to go a completely different way in the season and try to figure out what you're going to do. But I don't see a situation here where Cam doesn't play against Arizona State, excuse me.
What about the other players, Josh? How healthy are you? Obviously they were without a number of key pieces, certainly a couple of pieces on defense. So let's just get into your understanding as of now as how healthy Utah is and what the hope is that the bye week will hopefully provide a little, more health to the players that are kind of banged up.
Yeah, by and large, Utah is relatively healthy, right? They don't have too many nagging injuries that are really impacting them outside of Connor O'Toole, Karene Reed. Mike Mitchell has some lingering injuries that have been hampering him, but he's still playing. Connor O'Toole, my understanding is that he'll be back by Arizona State. I think, he'll be okay for that. Karene Reed with his ankle and, his leg there, I think that's a little bit more tough to predict. I would assume that he's much closer. But I would be surprised if it's like a sure bet against Arizona State, but I think he comes back sooner than later. I just think right now with ankles especially, it's really tough to kind of predict how you can go. There's a lot of lateral movements as a linebacker, and so you've got to kind of play that one by ear a little bit. But I think based on what I've heard, that Connor O'Toole should be on pace to be back by that Arizona State game. So you're relatively healthy and at full strength.
All right, I do this every week, but we got to revisit it. So, now that we're getting to the portion of the season where the observation, not conclusion, set aside in the sake of conclusion about who Utah football is after 5 games, a 4-1 start, 1-1 in conference. What are you comfortable saying today that you know about Utah that you feel good about? And what are the questions, Josh, you're still hoping to find answers to?
This is a really good team that just hasn't reached its full potential, right? And some of that's on Cam not being able to play and limiting that way. But I think there's different things in the red zone that I want to be able to see execution there. This has kind of been a constant theme for Utah year after year. Even when Cam is there, they don't always execute at the highest level inside the red zone. We're seeing it at a higher or a lower level with Isaac there, just because things are, they're tougher in the red zone. Things get much quicker, more shallow. So to me, that area is a big area that I want to see growth. And a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. We have some weeks that are great, other weeks that are a little bit not so great. And so being able to control that, those are probably the areas that I would want to see focused on right now. But if they can get those fixed up, I think this really is a team that can compete for a Big 12 championship. I think this is a team that can win the championship. I think they have all the pieces, but it still has to work together. And as you saw, if you give any other team in the Big 12 an inch, they're going to take it and run with it. Utah has to ways to kind of combat that. So, like I said, good team. It's just a matter of kind of fixing and fine-tuning a lot of those pieces, as well as hoping that Cam Rising is back on the field.
Let me just get your take today and an update on where you're at with Isaac, because I say it every week, and I'm going to continue to say it. I'll operate off the premise that Isaac's under center until he's not, because otherwise it's just impossible to try to read the Morse code that they throw at us up there. And so even if it is Cam against Arizona State, I believe they're going to need more from Isaac at some point if they want to win the Big 12. So from your vantage point, are you seeing incremental improvements, or was Saturday a step in the wrong direction?
No, I'm absolutely seeing incremental improvements. I mean, I think what you saw him be able to do were those first 3 drives of the game, I mean, he moved the ball relatively at ease. There was plays that he made where he rolled out to his left and was making a throw on the run. He's hitting tight windows. He's doing all the things that he needs to. He's staying composed in the pocket for the most part. Yeah, there's times where he takes sacks and he holds on to the ball. Those are going to come. But for the most part, like, you're seeing a guy that is understanding the game at a better level. Is it quite where it needs to be, where, he's the starter full time for a team? Probably not. But I think you have to come away from these games looking at the optimism about who he can be. He's getting a ton of stuff thrown on his plate. He's having to drink out of a fire hose, and he's handling it with a lot of composure. He's mature. He's coming in there. He's taking the responsibility on himself to say, I need to play better. He's not deflecting it to somebody else and saying that they need to do their job. This is a guy that's coming in there and doing absolutely how much he needs to be able to improve, and it's just going to take time, right? These reps are going to be invaluable for him next season. You've gone and Cam played all year and Isaac was just in garbage minutes. Maybe you're taking these situations, these lumps next year at the beginning of the season as he's learning. So, take it for what it's worth. I don't know what people were expecting. I think he's doing a good job for what he's got. Is it perfect? No, but I don't know that there's going to be many people that can come in there and perform at the level that he's doing. And I think there's a lot of optimism around his game.
What's your understanding of, if it's not Cameron QB2, when Isaac's out there, who's the backup as of now?
Right now, it's Brandon Rose. Brandon Rose has been taking those reps, and I think their playbook is much more limited with Brandon. He still has to show a lot of the experience on the field, which he hasn't gotten. So it would be interesting to see what happens. But I think the longer this goes, let's say that Isaac were to start against Arizona State, I could see a situation where Cam comes in those minutes. But I think they're playing towards Cam and hoping that Isaac will be the backup.
All right, let me ask you this from a macro standpoint. Is it time to view BYU in a way that we have not yet viewed them? I was a little bit skeptical simply because of the opportunistic situations they found themselves in with K-State, but that's part of winning football games, and they were able to capitalize on their opportunities. The second half against Baylor wasn't great, and Kalani talked about that himself after the game, but they're 5-0. And they're 2-0 in conference, and they've got their first Big 12 road win. They've got 3 road wins. They've got 3 P4 wins. They're 17 in the country. What's the Josh Furlong take on what's fair and accurate to say about BYU right now?
Yeah, I think I'm getting there on whether BYU is who we think they are. I think by and large that defense is phenomenal. I think they've done a tremendous job. Jay Hill's done a great job of being able to get them to do what they need to. They've been able to play really well and in unison, and that momentum is really carried forward. Offensively, I mean, I think they're doing a lot of good things right now. I mean, the fact that you can come in there with several running backs hurt and go down to your sixth-string guy, and he's able still to do what you need to. I mean, that says a lot of good things for him. I don't know that it's as convincing as many people want, especially in those late game situations where they allowed Baylor to come back. So I mean, I think there's still questions about them, but I think this is a team that is absolutely overachieving their expectations, and I think it's cool. I think it's cool that BYU is doing these things. I think whether you win because you're good or whether you win because of luck or whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. You're winning. Keep it up. Keep that momentum going. Use that as confidence to keep you moving forward. So, I mean, I think this is a team that really believes in itself right now, and until a team kind of takes that away from them and beats them, this is a team to watch, right? Like, they absolutely are going to be a force in this conference, and I think that's fun for the state of Utah.
All right, Josh, appreciate the time, man. Should be an interesting bye week, and let's hope they can get back at it. So you have a good one. We'll chat soon, okay?
Sounds great, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Josh Furlong, our buddy from KSL, obviously covering the University of Utah. We'll see if the Utes can get back at it, see who's under center after the bye week against Arizona State. Josh is on Twitter at JFurKSL is where you find him. All right, I want to tell you about my friends at Lifestyle Men's Health. For about a year now, I've been utilizing testosterone therapy, and for about 4 months, Vitality Peptides in addition to the testosterone therapy. It's made a big difference for my energy level. It's made a big difference for my workouts. My skin looks better. I've lost weight. I'm in better shape. And I'm sleeping better, and the brain fog in the morning, it's definitely not near what it used to be. So that's what I can give you a personal testimonial about as far as what they do at Lifestyle Men's Health. They also offer regenerative erectile function treatments if that's something you're in the market for. So they've got a special going on for new clients, 50% off of their ED treatments. Like I said, for me, I utilize their testosterone and their peptides. So I would just give Dr. Peterson a call and then let her answer your questions. See if it's a fit. Here's the number. It's 385-458-9203, 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. Or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Big 12 Power Rankings coming up next. Utah falls, BYU rises. What does that look like? Going to move over to Logan Cooley from the Utah Hockey Club, and Sarah Todd will join us. Then we'll get back to some college football in the 5 o'clock hour. And then we'll make way for Monday Night Football, and you can hear it all right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're going to do a little Utah Hockey Club conversation today. I've never been able to interview Logan Cooley before, but I'm going to have that opportunity coming up in just a little bit. Utah Hockey Club right around the corner. Openers here, man, 8 days away. Preseason rolling along as well, so we'll get to some of that conversation. Sarah Todd stops by to do a little jazz. The NBA training camp season is upon us. The Knicks and the T-Wolves made a big move. We'll get to some NBA stuff on the show. And then back to college football in the 5 o'clock hour. But it is time for our weekly Big 12 power rankings. I cannot speak for Porter, but I have had a massive shakeup in mind, as you would expect. Not just a stunning result here, but a lot of interesting, surprising results. We'll get to our picks a little bit later. Did not go well this weekend. We'll talk about that. Our Big 12 power rankings every single Monday. All right, Porter, I will give you the floor. So, obviously, some chaos and obviously some recalibration as far as what this conference is going to look like. As I talked about prior to the season, as somebody who really cares about the success of University of Utah football as their partner, I am more about Utah showing well for themselves this year as opposed to showing well for the conference. You are out for yourself. You have to make sure that you have the elements with your program necessary to survive. So I was hoping we wouldn't see the parity that everybody said we were going to see, but I was wrong. They were right. But a lot of movement in my Big 12 power rankings. I went 1 through 7 today, but I'll give you the floor. Who you got? And let's hear the Porter Larson Big 12 power rankings on a Monday.
Yeah, well, Spence, I mentioned at the beginning of the year, right, that I was going to put a big premium on my power rankings on winning. Novel concept, right?
I like it.
Football games, you're supposed to win. BYU and Iowa State are the only teams in the conference remaining unbeaten. They are my top 2 teams in the power rankings this week. I'm not predicting. I don't think this is how the conference ends with BYU and Iowa State playing in a Big 12 title game. But as of today, the Cougars are 5-0, and they've looked good doing it. They've got convincing wins. They've got some wins that, maybe look convincing on the scoreboard, but they're also seemingly getting a bunch of bounces. The ball's bouncing the right way for BYU right now, but they're also, I think, improving week to week, and there should be a lot of confidence there. They're number 1 for me in this week's power rankings. Iowa State coming in at number 2. Now, they had an early season bye, so they've got a little help here, but they just had a shutout win over Houston. I know Houston's not good this year, but that is a conference win in impressive fashion. Therefore, they are at number 2. And because of a couple of things, a bounce-back win this week and their loss to BYU not looking it still looks bad because of the final score, but their loss to BYU looking different, I'll say. My number 3 team in the Big 12, rather, this week is the Kansas State Wildcats. And number 4, thanks to a win over a top 10 Utah team in Rice-Eccles Stadium, the Arizona Wildcats. Again, I don't necessarily think this is how it ends, but I do think that they deserve credit for going on the road and winning in a stadium, Spence, where I've covered this team for 7 years. I have seen them lose in Rice-Eccles Stadium 3 times. So Arizona
You're so
deserves.
Spoiled, dude. I'm sorry, just real quick. You are so.
I mean, it's
spoiled.
it's
Somebody's
crazy.
Been going to that stadium since I was a kid. That's I didn't realize that. That's impressive.
In 33 of the last 35 they had won going into that one. So credit to Arizona. That's a big win for them. They're my number 4 team in this week's power rankings. At number 5, this was tough. This was tough because there are a bunch of teams with 1 loss right now that are coming off of either a iffy win or a loss to a good team. I'm keeping Utah in my top 5 at number 5. Now, Colorado, Texas Tech, UCF, Arizona State, those teams all also have 1 loss, and I think they're right there. But because of Utah's situation and the fact that I am pretty confident that the next time they take the field, they'll have QB1 under center, I'm keeping them in my top 5, and I think that they will, if all goes according to plan, and if we do see Cam Rising under center, I think they'll slowly climb back up that ladder as the season progresses.
All right, so pretty similar, but I'm going to roll with the 7 teams I ranked today, and we will start at 7, and we'll make our way down the list. At 7, I have Texas Tech. They have stayed clean in conference. They're 2-0 in conference. They lost on the Palouse to Wazoo, and they haven't really – I mean, they played Arizona State and Cincinnati at home. But to Porter's point, when the results are the results, got to give credit where credit is due. So I have Texas Tech at 7. I've got Colorado at 6, and I will certainly stand up and raise my hand and say so far I have been wrong about them. I thought they would get trounced at UCF. Like I said, I will give you our picks later on. We didn't do a great job this weekend. That's why I said please do not turn on the radio and say Spence picked UCF over Colorado, so I'm going to go put a couple ducats down there. Don't do that, okay, because I don't want to hear it. I'm just guessing like everybody else. So Colorado goes to UCF and trounces them after winning at Baylor, albeit in miraculous fashion. But I think it's time to give Deion and Colorado some love. They're 4-1, and they're 2-0 in the Big 12. I have them at 6. At number 5, I'm going to be stubborn. I'm going to say Arizona still at number 5. So Arizona gets trounced by K-State. Obviously, rolling to Salt Lake, take care of the Utes 23-10. And they answered questions about can they handle the physicality of a team that wants to play smash mouth like Utah, and they did. But ultimately, I still believe Utah is, here's a hot take, highly compromised without Cam Rising under center. Isaac is 18. He just enrolled in April. Chris Camerani was on the show for an entire hour on Friday. Talked a lot about the lumps that Isaac will inevitably take as an 18-year-old true freshman in Big 12 play, and we saw a lot of lumps for Isaac on Saturday. Cameron under center just looks different. Krenna Reed, Connor O'Toole, like some of their big pieces in the game, I just think it looks different. I think Utah's a better football team, and maybe Arizona's just a bad matchup. It's two straight years. So just because I'm stubborn, I have Arizona at 5, and then I have Utah at 4. This is the first week I have not had the Utes atop my Big 12 power rankings, but of course they did not earn it, getting trounced pretty good on their home turf. All right. Top 3, same as Porter, pretty obvious. Number 3 is K-State. They go to Stillwater. By the way, is Oklahoma State good? Are they even good? I mean, are we a little bit concerned that Utah's signature win, potentially all year long, outside of maybe BYU now and Iowa State, but as of now, the signature win for Utah is at Oklahoma State. Are they even good? Hard to tell, man. Kansas State trounced them. And as Porter referenced, the K-State loss to BYU in real time felt like they were kind of telling on themselves, but BYU has shown that they're for real. So I have K-State at 3 in my Big 12 power rankings, top 2, pretty obvious. Part of me thinks Iowa State has the best win on the docket so far against on the road at Iowa, but BYU might have the best win against K-State at home as of now. There's some other candidates out there. So I have Iowa State at 2, and rise and shout, the Cougars are out. Give me all the Cougar tails. I want a bunch of swig. Give me a dirty Dr. Pepper with some coconut. Let's get weird. Vanilla Cougar tail, maple Cougar tail. I want Cosmo doing backflips. I want it all. I want whiteouts. I want the Hawaiian dances. I want all of it. LaVell Edwards Stadium, BYU at 1. So I've got BYU 1, Iowa State 2, K-State 3, Utah 4, Arizona 5, Colorado 6, Texas Tech 7, as we give you our Big 12 power rankings, and we do it every Monday here on The Drive. All right, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Murdoch Auto. So I'm driving around a Genesis G80. If you haven't heard of the Genesis G80, you got to check it out. It's a luxury sedan. It feels like you're driving like any of the top shelf brands, BMW, Audi, Mercedes. It is a top shelf vehicle, and it's so much more affordable than any of the other luxury sedans that are out there. If you're in the market for a new car, check out Murdoch Auto, and namely their luxury brand, the Genesis store down in Linden. Make sure to tell them you heard it on the show. They'll hook you up, man. They're good people. It's the grand opening of the Genesis store, Highline luxury brand for the Murdoch Auto team. So for Genesis, picture like what Toyota did with Lexus, right? So Hyundai is doing with Genesis what Toyota did with Lexus. These vehicles are awesome. I mean, I was skeptical, I'm not going to lie. When I first heard about, hey, you should try this new Hyundai line, I'm like, wait a second, what? And then went down, took the car for a drive, and my good friends at Murdoch Auto have hooked me up with that vehicle, and they'll hook you up too. All 3 Hyundai stores are having open house events this month as we celebrate the newly remodeled stores in Linden, Logan, and Murray. Murdoch Hyundai has been Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer for 19 years running, only 3 months away from the Murdoch Auto team celebrating their 100-year anniversary. Pretty cool. All right, coming up next, we'll do a little NBA trade made in the National Basketball Association, and we'll kind of talk about that. It's media day and training camp opening. We're back to some 5 o'clock hour. That'll be your entire 5 o'clock hour on your ride home. We are going to interview Logan Cooley today from the Utah Hockey Club, so we got plenty to do on this beautiful Monday afternoon. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. I'll get back to some college and pro football coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. We also will get you ready for some Monday Night Football. Of course, you can hear that game on our radio station. Monday Night Football, got a couple of different games tonight to wrap up the week of pro football. So stay tuned for that. Logan Cooley's going to stop by today. One of the centers from the Utah Hockey Club. His opening day is right around the corner, man. So there you go. Porter, we got an NBA trade over the weekend, and not just any NBA trade. It looks like, well, I don't know. I'm not fully sure exactly how I feel about it. I'm not a big Cat guy. I'm not a big Karl Anthony Towns guy. I never have been. However, I've always been a proponent of, and this kind of makes me a little bit different than other guys that cover the NBA. Like, get me the talent and we'll figure it out. You know, a couple of things come to mind. Like when the James Harden, Chris Paul backcourt kind of came to life in Houston, everybody was screaming about how there's no chance that it's going to work because the old media boring cliche thing is like, well, they need the ball in their hand. Well, yes, okay, but they can learn to pass, they can learn to share. There are very few like ball dominant offensive players. They can't learn how to play with other people. Allen Iverson might have been one of them. We had one here in Al Jefferson, a different type of ball dominant player, but never was a guy that was going to be a linchpin of a winning team because all he could do was kind of score. Didn't really block shots, protect the rim, didn't rebound all that well. And from the Knicks side of this, so the Knicks send Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle to Minnesota to play next to Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, and Joe Ingles. And in exchange, they receive Karl Anthony Towns. So to dig into this a little bit, the interesting thing about where the Knicks find themselves is Isaiah Hartenstein goes to OKC. Mitchell Robinson is hurt. You just traded away Randall. So you're asking for a lot from Josh Hart and OG Anunoby on the boards. Okay, so their starting lineup is going to be Karl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Jalen Brunson. Okay, it's a good starting five. It's not a lot of depth. They're going to rely on a lot. Precious Achiuwa is going to be asked to do a lot. Miles McBride campaign. They'll probably make some other small moves here or there to get a little depth. Tom Thibodeau is as a defense and rebounding coach first. And Anunoby and Hart are good wing defenders. Mikal Bridges is a really good wing defender. Cat does not play any defense. He never has. He doesn't rebound well for a guy that size. He's just kind of a little bit like Al was, where he'll get a rebound because he's big and he's standing under the basket. But he's never been known for, like, making effort plays or guarding. I do think a Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns pick and roll is pretty intoxicating because Cat can pop out and shoot it. He also can rim roll and gets up and down the floor okay for a guy that size. So, Porter, my bottom line here is from the Knicks side of things. Get the talent, figure it out. I think they won the deal as it pertains to the talent side of things. Now we'll see schematically what the fit looks like. What's your reaction to a big NBA trade that was made over the weekend?
Yeah, I think I'm with you, but at the same time, I think I'm with you that I'm probably less excited about the Knicks grabbing a legitimate star than I ever have been. And I don't know why that is. I think it is because I'm a little lower on Cat than I think his ability tells. And I don't know why that is. It's just always felt like he left a little bit out on the floor, right? He's obviously really, really talented, but it always feels like there's a little bit left out there with Karl Anthony Towns. I wonder how that plays in the New York market. I do, but as you mentioned, you get the talent in the room, and I think in the next couple of years, Spence, they have a shot at winning a title, but beyond that, that's a big contract that you're going to have to think about long term. And it's also not going to be very easy to move if it doesn't go really, really well if you're the Knicks. So, yeah, I'm with you on that side. For the Timberwolves, I don't know how much I like it. I think you sacrifice a lot of spacing, which helped Anthony Edwards be efficient. You sacrifice some stuff on the defensive side, I think. But either way, a little bit of an odd trade, but one that raises the ceiling for the Knicks. But I don't know what it does with their team chemistry, what it does really in their locker room. We shall see.
Yeah, the reports have been interesting. And again, in this day and age of quote-unquote media reporting things, it's hard to corroborate how much is real and how much is not. But there's a belief around New York that Dante DiVincenzo wasn't necessarily like on board with the whole like Villanova narrative. and I always kind of felt like he was the odd man out. I like Dante. I like the way he plays. I'm sad to see him go. From Minnesota's standpoint, this is a depth play on the wing for sure. Because right now, Joe Ingles is their backup small forward. The ghost of Joe Ingles, all due respect, love Joe. Rob Dillingham, a young player they like an awful lot. They do have Nikhil Alexander-Walker, who was here for a while. But DiVincenzo can provide some backup depth to that backcourt. I don't love the Randall Gobert pairing, so I think they're going to ask Naz Reid to do a lot more there. And they have a young Jaden McDaniels as a small forward. But interesting to hear Justin Zanuck talk about there were no opportunities for the Jazz to make deals and then see a big deal go down. We'll do some Jazz a little bit later on. But Farmer and Chemist time. So let's welcome in Doug from Farmer and Chemist on a Monday. Doug, how are you?
Hello, Spence. I'm great. Nice to hear you today.
Yeah, I appreciate the time today. So, as I say every time, one of you join us from Farmer and Chemist, for those of you that are skeptical about CBD, it's very effective. It's not addicting. It can get you off sleep meds that might be addictive and potentially damaging. It might get you off pain meds that we know are addictive and long-term not conducive to good health. Let's start with how you can help our listeners, Doug, like you helped me, sleep a little bit better.
Absolutely, Spence. We love it. So first of all, none of our items require a prescription. So you're not going into marijuana pharmacy to get these. You don't have to see your doctor. You can come into our store as long as you're an adult and buy any of our products, either those that contain THC or those that are zero THC, and we have both kinds. For sleep, Spence, I think our best is something called Yummy Gummy. Not only do they taste good, but they are super effective at helping folks get rest at night. There's a ton of CBD, some CBN, and just a little bit of THC to make the restful night open up new worlds for you.
How about pain management, Doug? For our listeners out there that might have muscle soreness, I've been using some of the balm on my tennis elbow that I get for playing way too much mediocre golf, so that's very effective. How can you help our listeners that are suffering from pain, Doug?
Yeah, you and me both, man. Problem Salved is our top pain reliever. If you're looking for something topical, Problem Salved is the way to go. There's 2,000 milligrams of CBD packed into an ounce, plus some CBG, which is an amazing anti-inflammatory. And we even put a little THC in that salve. We're not, don't eat it, but it's great to rub on, and it makes the CBG and the CBD work even better. So you get nice local absorption. Listen, if you're in law enforcement and you're worried about THC, with Problem Salved, you don't have to worry about it. It penetrates deep enough to help the muscle and the joint, but doesn't get into your blood, so you're totally clean on any drug test with Problem Salved, and it's amazing for joints and muscles, any kind of backache or anything like that.
All right, Doug, before I set you loose, what would you recommend to our listeners as far as how they can get more information if they simply have questions so you can alleviate some concerns about maybe some misconceptions as far as what you guys do and what makes Farmer and Chemist a little bit different than the other guys out there?
Yeah, there are a ton of misconceptions. We appreciate that it's kind of a new market still. So we're pharmacists, and we recommend to anybody, whether you buy from us or somebody else, go where you can trust the information that you're getting. So you can get trusted information at farmerandchemist.com. You can come into our store at 7719 South Main Street in Midvale and talk to our team there. And we're happy to have one-on-one conversations with you about what the best type of medicine is for the ailment that you're trying to treat. And best of all, because of our relationship with you, Spence, if you mention ESPN 700, whether online or in the store, you get a 20% discount.
Doug, thank you, my friend. I'm still thinking about just calling you at about 10:30 so you can read me a bedtime story before I go to bed, because the combination of the gummy and that soothing voice is something else. So I appreciate your time. Have a good week, okay?
I'm ready. Thanks. Have a good day.
All right, Doug, Farmer and Chemist. That dude, seriously, nobody's read me a bedtime story since I was like 5. Goodnight Moon was my preference. If you know, you know. The youngs don't know. All right, we'll talk about this later. We're going to catch a quick break, and then Logan Cooley's going to join us from the Utah Hockey Club. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Going to bring in Sarah Todd today. It was Utah Jazz Media Day, and believe it or not, the Jazz are opening up training camp coming up this week. So we'll do a little NBA on the show. Back in the 5 o'clock hour, it's all college football. We'll talk about the latest with Cam Rising, the Utah Utes, in a tough loss on Saturday against Arizona. Do a little BYU as they're rising up the polls. BYU is at the top of our power rankings today in the Big 12, so stay tuned for that. Josh Furlong will stop by from KSL, but let's do a little hockey on the program, a little Utah Hockey Club, opening day right around the corner. And one of their centers, Logan Cooley, is our guest on a Monday. Logan, happy Monday, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling promptly. Right off the top, what is it about you hockey guys that are so polite and like on time? What makes you guys such nice guys that like are responsible and on time and things like that?
I don't know. I think that's just I don't like it's simple, just hockey guys. I think we're always, just pretty chill guys, down to earth, humble and just like to kind of do things the right way. And I think that's what it makes our sport really enjoyable to watch and kind of just brings a lot of fans and but I think just like I said, just down to earth guys and respectful people.
Is it something about the way that hockey culture is when you're growing up? Because I grew up in the Northeast. It's a hockey hotbed. And so I encountered and got to know a lot of hockey players, a lot of pro hockey players. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the discipline you need to play such a hard sport. I don't know if it's the culture of the way you're raised playing hockey, or maybe you just have good parents. What is it about the youth hockey experience, Logan, that seems to breed, professional hockey players that know what it's like to be a pro, the true meaning of being a pro?
Yeah, I think it's kind of all the above what you just said there. I think just the culture in hockey, it's, just all about being selfless, kind of putting the team first and everything you do. That's what you need to do to, be a successful player, especially at the NHL level, and especially if you want to win. So I think just, like I said, being selfless, always being about the team, doing whatever you need to kind of do to help the team win, I think is super important. And I think you get that in hockey growing up, and they kind of teach you at an early age what it's like to kind of be a champion and, if you want to have a successful career.
So let's get to know you a little bit, Logan. Of course, the Utah hockey experience is new to a lot of people around here in Salt Lake. And so we'll get to, how the preseason is going. We'll talk about the opener, but let's get to know Logan Cooley a little bit. Where'd you grow up? When did you first fall in love with hockey? And when did you first realize that you had a shot to be pretty good at this?
Yeah, so I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Started playing when I was around 4 or 5. And I think just my whole family was kind of surrounded by hockey. It's kind of all I really knew growing up. And I think, you always think you're pretty good growing up. But then, I was fortunate to play for the national team development program in Plymouth, Michigan. And I think from there, you kind of, it's the, top 23 players, American players in your birth year. And I think just from there, it's kind of when I knew that, if I keep going in this direction and keep doing what I'm doing, that, maybe I have a chance to play in the National Hockey League.
So I would imagine you were always a goal scorer. I mean, hell, you're a goal scorer now, so it's not like they moved you, out of goal for you to, be pushed up to. Were you always somebody who excelled in the attack, scoring goals, even as a young player growing up in youth hockey?
Yeah, for sure. I think, for me, that's what I love to do. I love, scoring goals, and, when you're scoring goals, you're helping your team win. So I think just there's no better feeling that, when you see that puck go in the back of the net. And, I think everyone's always trying to score goals. That's kind of a goal for most guys, is how they can, get more goals, find ways to, score. And I think for me, that's always something that, I've worked on during the season, during the off season, just always trying to find different ways to kind of put the puck in the net.
So when did you first hear the news that you guys were moving, and where were you? What was it like? Like, what was that phone call, Logan, that you received when whoever it is told you, hey, you live in Utah now? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean it was my first year in the league, so it was pretty wild. Like I didn't really, I was all just you know, as a young kid coming into the league, you don't really know what to expect, and obviously there was a lot of stuff that happened last year, and there was always, I'd say, you know, word that we might be moving, and you just never really believe it until it actually happens. And then when we first got word, I think, officially we were in Edmonton, I believe, getting ready to play a game, and I think, the GM came in, the coach kind of gave us a little talk that, we were kind of officially heading to Utah, so it was tough to kind of process right away. But, I know I could speak for, everyone else on the team also, just how excited we are to be here. How excited the fans are, and it's pretty special to have an ownership like Ryan Smith, and for him to kind of do what he's been doing, it's pretty special, and it gives us, a really good chance to be a successful team in this league.
Did you know anything about Utah prior to arriving here? I mean, you're 20 years old. You grew up, in a central part of the country, and then you lived in Arizona. So did you know anything about Utah? And attending to that question, what have you learned about Utah since you landed here?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't know too much. When I first landed here, it was, just an unbelievable spot. I think when, you come in on the plane and see the mountains and just the city, I think it's just unbelievable. So I think just, honestly, just getting situated here, and everyone just seems like unbelievable people. Everyone's so nice here and, respectful. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just how welcoming it is here, and it really made the transition really easy as a young kid and a player in this league.
What sort of style do you guys want to play? I mean, preseason is the preseason, and there's been a combination of some of the big-name guys like you and like Clayton playing, and some of the young guys that won't be playing in the NHL at all have been getting some run. So it's hard to really identify exactly what the identity of the team is, at least from my seat, until we see all you guys play together when the regular season and the puck drops in just over a week now. But generally speaking, what style of play would you tell fans the Utah Hockey Club wants to execute this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think just we always talk about being, a team that plays with speed, plays with pace. Is not afraid to do the dirty work and go to the dirty areas. But I think, when we do all those things, when we play as a team, when we play the right way, not forcing any plays and, playing behind the other team's defense, I think we're a really tough team to beat. And, we showed that a little bit last year, obviously before that losing streak. But, I think just with this year, we have a lot more experience, a lot of more players that, have won in this league, which is super important. So I think, I'm excited to kind of see what we could do. But, I think when, like I said, when we're doing those things, we're a super tough team to beat. And, I'm excited to get going here.
So 20 goals, 24 assists a year ago as a rookie. I mean, that's an awesome rookie year. Do you have individual metrics that you'd like to see yourself hit? Are you one of these guys that prior to the season you write the number 30 down a million times and just manifest yourself scoring 30 goals? Like, what's that process look like? What are some of the individual goals you hope to accomplish this year after a really good rookie season?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, I would think any guy in the league has, it's a competitive league. Everyone wants to continue to get better and, produce and kind of have a name for themselves in this league. So I think, for me, it's always about, the team and doing what I need to do to help the team, win a championship. So, but I think, I'd probably be lying if I, said I didn't have any goals or specific things I want to hit. But, yeah, I mean, I think, you always want to do better than you were the year before. And just, I'm not a guy that puts a specific number. I don't like to have, limits on myself, but, I'm excited to see what I can do with, just a year of experience in this league.
Who are the leaders in that locker room? When Logan, when player X, Y, or Z stands up and decides to address the group, who gets the attention, who gets the respect, who are the I mean, you're 20 years old, so maybe it's you, but you're a young player. Who are some of the guys you look up to that when they speak in the locker room, they have your full attention?
Yeah, we're pretty, fortunate to have, a ton of great leaders, mentors on this team. I think, there's guys that aren't the loudest in the room, but, show leadership by their play on the ice. And then you have guys that, are a little louder in the locker room, guys like, Lawson Krause, Clayton Keller, who I'd say kind of leads more by example. Just guys like them that kind of, been around the league for a while. A guy like Sergachev, who has, won 2 cups, Ian Cole, who has come in. Like, I think when you have guys that, have shown that they've been on winning teams, that you kind of, listen up when they speak. And I think that's super important as a young player and just as a young team. I think it's important to, have a lot of leadership and, experience that could help us moving forward here.
Who's the best fighter? Now, sports fans around here are not used to what they're about to see when, the gloves drop and there are punches thrown. It's not something that happens in basketball in a way that it does in hockey or football or really any sport. It's kind of embedded in the culture. Is there one dude that stands out among the rest, Logan, when it comes to the toughest guy in that locker room when the gloves drop?
Yeah, I mean, I think, he's really made a name for himself. I'd say Liam O'Brien, just the way, obviously he could throw down. Obviously he's a really good fighter, but, he's a guy that, will stick up for anyone on our team. So it's super awesome to have. And, you honestly feel just a little more comfortable out on the ice sheet, just knowing that, he's on your side and will step up if you ever need him. So he's an important piece of our team. And, but yeah, I'd for sure say Liam O'Brien.
What is the origin story of the spicy tuna nickname? I've heard the nickname. I just don't know where it came from.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I kind of just went on with it when I first came into the league. I actually do not know the exact reason, but that's something that I might have to find out here. Do
you have a nickname, Logan, either now or growing up? Did you have a nickname when you were coming up through the ranks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just always Cole's, just short for the last name. I think everyone kind of, just keeps, adds like an S to their last name or whatever in the hockey world. So it's pretty short, but, I've had it since I was, probably 10 years old.
I read that even though you grew up in Pittsburgh, you were an Ovechkin fan. I can't imagine that endeared you to your classmates as a kid. Is that the case?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely would get ripped a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I just, from a young age, just loved the Capitals, and I loved the way, obviously, they had a bunch of teams that were, really skilled, and I just loved the way Ovi played, and so obviously one of my favorite players growing up. So it was nice to kind of, watch them growing up, and obviously them and the Penguins had a bunch of great battles, so it was always fun, when those two teams were going at it.
So it appears from what I've read that hockey is a family affair for you in the Cooley household. You have some brothers that have played some college hockey, some uncles that played some college hockey. So was hockey not only something that you loved individually, but something that was kind of a family affair as you were coming up in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, for sure. I think, with my two uncles both playing, my two brothers, I just remembered when my brothers were playing, always wanting to go to their practice. And, when I was at their practice, I always had a stick in my hand. I just, loved every second of being at the rink. So I think it's, for me, that's all I kind of knew. That's all I wanted to do from a young age. And, I just remembered, growing up, I didn't want to do anything else but play this game. So I'm pretty fortunate that this is my job and this is what I love to do. So, but, when you have a family that kind of has played Division I, played a little bit of pro, it really made me excited and made me want to do something special with this game.
Is your family still in Pennsylvania? Any plans for them to come out and check out your digs in Salt Lake and maybe see some Utah hockey this year?
Yeah, they're still in Pittsburgh, but they'll for sure be out here a ton. My parents helped move me in, so I got a nice place here, and it's gonna be awesome for when they come out. Even when I went to that preseason game and at the Delta Center, I just got so excited and texted them right away, just saying how I can't wait for them to come see it and get on that ice. It's going to be pretty special to have my family there and obviously the fans too.
Is it hard for either your parents to see? You're 20 years old. I have a son that's 23. My son's 3 years older than you are, Logan. So you're a young player, second year. Is it tough for mom and dad to see their youngest boy away from the nest? Is it hard for them to see you go out on their own or on your own, or are they just proud of what you're doing and they just kind of have your back?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little bit of both. Obviously, they want to see me succeed and will support me with anything I do. So I'm lucky in that aspect. But for me, it's never easy leaving home. I'd say definitely my mom. It's always tough leaving her, and she doesn't always take it the best way. So anytime I could see her throughout the year and have her come out, it's awesome. And you just feel a lot more comfortable when she's around. And but yeah, being a young kid, it's never easy leaving your family. But again, this is the sacrifices that you have to make to play this game, and definitely wouldn't change it for the world.
For sure. When Logan Cooley isn't playing hockey, what's Logan Cooley doing? Are we talking video games? Are you an outdoors guy? You like to get out? You like to read movies? What are some things you like to do when you're not playing hockey to kind of keep your mind right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always, especially during the year, on your off days, you're usually pretty tired and just want to chill. So I think just getting on the video games with some of my buddies back home, or in the summertime when not playing hockey, it's always fun to get out on the course and just kind of relax. It's a good way to kind of take your mind off hockey and just be with your buddies. So I like to be active too. I don't like to just kind of sit inside all day, but those are some things that I for sure like to do.
All right, Logan, last thing and I'll set you loose. Your general manager, Bill Armstrong, has been very adamant that this is still a rebuild, and it's a step-by-step rebuild. Obviously, expediting the process with Sergachev and some others this offseason has allowed some vets, Cole, guys like that, to kind of permeate into a young locker room, and maybe you grow faster than any of us expect. Is it playoffs or bust? Is it one game at a time? Is it let's lift the trophy? What's the team's approach to another year and an incremental rebuild, and what do you think the fan base should expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's always having a winning attitude, and for me, I don't like to have limits on anything. I think anything is possible when, you come together as a group and you work towards the same goal. So I think just, taking it day by day, it's, we have a thing, around the rink that, our coach always talks about is just win the day. And I think that's super important to kind of just focus on whether it's just practice, whether it's the game. I think just, coming together as a group and just putting one foot in front of the other. Obviously it's, like we said, it's still, we're trying to kind of build our team into being a successful NHL team, and that obviously takes time. But, I think for us, we're ready to kind of, start being extremely competitive, start, winning games, and obviously pushing for the playoffs. So that's all we have in mind is, making the playoffs and doing things the right way to make sure we get there.
Last thing, why 92? Why number 92? I read that's the highest worn number in Minnesota Gopher history. Why'd you land on 92?
Yeah, so when I first committed there was a guy that took 18, and I didn't want to be a young guy taking his number. So I wore 18 for a while growing up, and I don't know. I just thought there's no specific reason. I just thought maybe I'd switch it up a little bit, and just love the way 92 looked on the jersey. So had a pretty good year at Minnesota, so I kept it, and I think it looks pretty good out there.
All right, buddy. I appreciate the time. It's great to have you guys here. Been a long-time hockey fan and a long-time host in this market without hockey to talk about. So juiced to have the Utah Hockey Club, and stay safe, good health, and we'll chat soon. Thank you, Logan.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Logan Cooley, one of the centers for Utah Hockey Club. Number 92 is his number. He had 20 goals and 24 assists last year, 44 points in his rookie season. Kid can fly. He's got a lot of complete skill sets, and you're going to see a lot from him. I think they had 4 20-goal scorers a year ago, and Logan was one of them. Simply his rookie season. He has good size. He has good speed. Yeah, wears number 92, and appreciate him stopping by today. If you want to meet Logan, I've got good news. He'll be at Overtime Cards and Collectibles, which is a client of ours, and great spot. Been out there on remote a couple of different times. My buddy Chris owns it. If you like sports, you're going to love Overtime Cards and Collectibles. They have all the best trading cards and collectibles for all your favorite sports. Basketball, football, the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, MMA, and so many more. You can buy cards for all your favorite athletes now, from Cam Rising, Keontae George, and Larry Markin with the Jazz, and even all your favorite old school players like John Stockton or Karl Malone. Some of the cards are even signed. For all of you hockey fans out there, Logan Cooley, my guest this hour, a forward for the Utah Hockey Club, is going to be on site September the 21st for an autograph signing. That's not right. What's the date today? It's going to be October 18th. All right. October 18th, you know, the copy thing. So October 18th, check it out, 10673 South State Street in Sandy. More coming up next on ESPN 700. We're back to college football coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Josh Furlong, our buddy from KSL, will stop by. We'll discuss the latest on Utah football. BYU football, too. BYU rising, Utah falling. Our Big 12 power rankings took place earlier today. So stay tuned for that, latest on Cam Rising and such. But the Utah Jazz open camp this week. This is kind of the one time a year where everything is going on. Talk a little bit of everything throughout the course of the show. Our next guest covers the Jazz. It has been too long since the legend herself, I think I'm supposed to say my queen because she won Utah Sports Writer of the Year, Sarah Todd, is back on the program. Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Spence?
How was the intro? I'm a little rusty. Did I do okay this time?
No, it's great. I love that, it was 2 years ago, and it's still holding strong.
Well, you asked me to do it once, and I do what I'm told because I behave myself, Sarah. So
I did not ask you to do it.
I do believe after it was announced, you asked me on the show to refer to you as the queen or something like that. I'm getting old.
That's possible, actually.
Okay, fair enough. How are you? What'd you do during the offseason? You take some time off? What's the latest with you?
Yeah, I'm great. Took some time off. Went with Colin. He had a couple of work conferences in Europe that gave us the opportunity to kind of turn it into a little bit of a mini vacation. I covered the draft from Riga, Latvia. So that was interesting. But spent a lot of time in Utah this summer and really enjoyed myself. But man, I'm itching for basketball to be back, so I'm happy that we're here.
For sure. Were you at the show? I saw Colin at a concert last night. Were you there?
Absolutely not. No,
Okay.
I was not there. It was outside, and my allergies just won't allow me to do it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, you were missed, Sarah. You were missed. All right.
Thank you.
Also excited for some basketball. Are we excited for Jazz basketball? Question mark. I had Andy on the show last week, and I've talked to a couple of different guess about this, and we're pretty football centric right now and will be for a little while, but the week that the Jazz open training camp is something that typically brings a lot of excitement around here. It doesn't feel like the buzz is very high. I don't mean that critically, but what's your general sense on where this basketball community is right now prior to the start of the pro basketball season?
Yeah, I think it really depends on who you ask, right? Like, if you're going to ask people on the national stage if they're excited about the Jazz, then the answer is probably no. And definitely that's warranted because the Jazz are not going to be competing for a title this year. That's not going to be where they're at. If you're asking people, will the rebuilding Jazz be making the bigger headlines during the football season and while people are excited about college stuff? Like, no. But if you're talking about basketball fans, Utah Jazz fans, junkies like myself, are you excited about the Utah Jazz this season? I would think absolutely. Like, a rebuilding team, it makes you kind of realign what you view as successful or exciting, and I think that process is exciting. So, watching young players develop and seeing whether or not they're actually going to be good pieces for the future, all of these incoming sophomores, rookies, the draft picks that are on the horizon, you're not going to hit 100% on all of them, and it takes a while to figure out who's actually going to be good, if any of them. And that whole process is very exciting for someone like me who just loves basketball. And I mean, for the next era of what Jazz basketball is going to be, and for maybe, younger fans, that this is the team that they're coming up with, they might remember these days. If the Jazz get to somewhere, very successful, if they happen to build towards an actual title contending team, fans that are paying attention to this right now are going to remember these days and be like, oh yeah, I remember the first time I watched Keontae George play basketball. Oh man, I remember that summer when everyone was talking about Lowry might be traded, but he re-signed and he stayed in Utah. Then now look where we are. So these are things that are really exciting in my opinion.
So give me some takeaways from last Friday. Ryan Smith, Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck. I thought Zanuck's comments, as they usually are, were very pointed when he said they tried to do a bunch of different things, but I believe it just wasn't there. There just wasn't anything out there for them to do. And, throughout the offseason, I'd hear the reports, and I can't corroborate any of them, but I'd hear things like, well, the Jazz plan is to sign Paul George and trade for Mikal Bridges. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, excellent plan. Go do that. No part of me ever thought it was going to come to fruition. But what were your takeaways from last Friday when the Jazz brass, ownership, leadership addressed the media?
Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff I can corroborate, right? Did the Jazz try and get Mikal Bridges? Yeah. I mean, was the package that they were offered from New York better? Yeah, sure. But the Jazz are in a position where they have to think incredibly critically about where they are and where they could be depending on what move is made, right? So the Knicks, for example, they're pretty close, right? Like they need to make big moves right now to capitalize on what they have in this moment and not let it go to waste. Meanwhile, if you're the Jazz, you look at it's like if they got Mikal Bridges and added that to the roster while giving up the future capital they would have had to in that deal, does that make the Jazz a title contender? I would argue no, they didn't have the roster for that. Does adding Mikal Bridges to the roster maybe make them more likely to land some sort of free agent or somebody else? Yeah, maybe. Again, it's not really a sure thing, and so the best bet for them was kind of what we expected all along. They're going to have to really go hard into developing their young players and trying to do it from within. That's what we expected that the Jazz were going to have to do through this rebuild anyways, and here they are. And whether that's the correct choice or not is for, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, Sarah, to look back in hindsight, right? But right now it feels like the smartest choice to make. And yeah, I think that you're right in saying that the comments from Justin Zanuck were very pointed, and I think that the most important thing to take away from that, and also from what Will Hardy said today at Media Day, is that the Jazz are the last couple of years have been a little bit unsure when the season started. Where are we going to go? What's the team going to look like at first? What's it going to look like at the trade deadline? But I think that right now what we're hearing from all of the people in power with the Jazz is that the focus is on the young players. We have to invest time and opportunity into these young players to know what we have so that we can actually start making decisions in the future.
So it's yesterday's news, ultimately, but marketing brought back. Do you think when Zanuck talks about there was nothing there to be had, it is including the marketing noise that we heard? I mean, look, I don't, and you and I talked about this. I was never of the belief they were going to do it. I understood why, if they did do it, their motivation. I understood the dynamic of, let's do that deal to really break it down to the studs. But in my opinion, Sarah, as you and I have talked about, Lowry's the one thing you found. Okay, you traded away a glut of really good players, and we know why you did it. We're all on board with it. But throughout the course of the process of this rebuild, well, I guess I'll say I think they found two things. I think they found Lowry. I think they found Will. I think they found their head coach, who I'm very impressed with. But do you think Zanuck's comments about, there just wasn't anything there are including the dynamic of all the noise around marketing or outside of that?
I'm not sure if he meant it to include that because, I mean, the way that I understand how things unfolded with the marketing stuff this summer is that the Jazz went into it. I mean, exactly. I've said it on your show many times. They didn't go into the summer wanting to get rid of Lowry. Like you said, he's the one thing they found. If you're doing a rebuild and the goal is to find good pieces for the future, guess what? One just fell into it in that trade, right? So keep the guy that you found. And I think that, they went into talks with teams this offseason being like, all right, well, if you want him bad enough, prove it. And I don't think that conversations with other teams ever really got past maybe a first offer this summer for him. I think that, there were a couple of conversations here and there, but the idea that there were really deep talks and that there were, close to a deal, I don't think that happened. So I think when he says, I'm assuming here, but I think that when Justin Zanuck says, we tried and we didn't get the big thing done, I don't think that that's including Lowry because I think that they expected to go into this season with him on the roster.
Yeah, that's well said, and I agree with that. Let me ask you about Will. It's year 3 for Will Hardy. Year 5 option picked up. There's some conflicting reports. He already had 4 picked up, already had 5 picked up. Does the dynamic of having the year 5 option picked up, is that essentially look, man, sorry we couldn't get you any big dogs. This is a young group, and we know it's going to take some time. Like when I saw the news that ultimately that option was picked up, when I saw that news, my first thought was, okay, that's an admission from ownership and the front office. They couldn't get Will better players, and they are going to just give him permission to grow with this young group. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think Will took this job understanding that there might not be a lot of big name players in here for a while anyways. So I don't know that actually had anything to do with it. If anything, I think that, the one player that they're investing a ton of money in, Lauri Markkanen, he basically trusts Will Hardy with his life. Like he completely respects him, and he's one of the reasons that Lauri signed the extension. He trusts Will. He trusts the vision of the team. Lauri is agreeing to a life where he might not make the playoffs for another couple of years, right? And to show that kind of a trust in someone, Lauri showing that to Will Hardy, I think that Jazz brass has to look at that and be like, why wouldn't we show trust in him too? And so I think that Will has done a great job. The players absolutely love him, and so when a coach gets that kind of vote of confidence and he hasn't shown that he's done anything wrong to this point, why not?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let's move over to this space. I wonder if you believe the glut of really good young teams in the West has recalibrated the timeline that the Jazz have in mind to when they're back to legitimate competition, not, winning 30, 35 games, not maybe being a play-in team. Because for a while, Sarah, as you know, it was kind of like, all right, LeBron's going to go away at some point. He's still around, but he's older. Steph's going to go away at some point, still around, but he's older. Durant, all that stuff. But now you look at Dallas, you look at New Orleans, even Denver, still young with Jokic, very much in his prime. I could keep going. Minnesota, obviously OKC, Memphis gets Ja back. There are a lot of really good young teams in the league, in the Western Conference right now, and the Jazz are not close to any of them, quite frankly, as far as competition. Do you think that dynamic in the West has changed their time frame? I understand what they say. They want to be aggressive. They want to be ready to pounce when the opportunity strikes. I understand all of that, but this is the way the stuff works in this league. You have to look around at the landscape and try to identify when a window could open and then put yourself in the best spot to capitalize on that window. Does the youth in the West change the time frame the Jazz fans should expect as far as when this team is back to being very competitive?
I actually don't think so. The problem with playing like the who's going to be good when game is that, you've also got Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama and Cooper Flagg's coming up next year, and then you'll have Ace Bailey and Dylan Turner and all these guys, and like guys in the draft after that too. Like the talent pool is larger and higher than ever, and the teams that aren't good right now might be good tomorrow, right? Like it's really hard to predict when the open window might be, especially in the Western Conference. Chances are there is no window, right? Like you just have to either be in the mix or not. And so if you're trying to guess what year would be the good one to like push all the chips in, I think that's a really, really dangerous game to play. I think you just hope you get Cooper Flagg, right? Like there's just I think that it's really hard to play that game, and if it was me running a team, I wouldn't be paying attention to like who's good right now. I'd just be trying to be better than everyone else as soon as I could.
All right, Sarah, you brought it up. You brought up Cooper Flagg, so let's do the let's do the thing. Let's do the deal. Is it possible for the Jazz to play themselves into a position where they have the best amount of draft capital possible for them to maybe grab the kid? And look, they make some veteran additions. None of them were all like Patty Mills. All due respect, my man's had a hell of a career. He's a pro. Drew Eubanks, we know the deal. But do you think it's on the table for the Jazz to play some of these good young players? And there's still Clarkson and Sexton. I mean, Lowry's really good. I mean, it's hard to lose a lot when you have a player like Lauri Markkanen. How do you think rotationally we're going to see this thing play out? And is there a real chance that they're going to be in the mix to grab this kid who most people think is a generationally special player next draft?
Yeah, I think that they will be in the mix. You mentioned it. It's hard to lose a lot of games with Lauri Markkanen. They lost a lot of games last season with Lauri Markkanen, and this season I think you're going to see Lauri playing a lot more games with the young players than he did last year. I think that there's going to be a lot more, rookie and sophomore growing pains this year. I think, the messages that we're getting from the team heading into training camp, preseason, the regular season is that the focus is on those young players and what that means for the veterans. I mean, I honestly wouldn't expect to see Patty Mills play a lot. You're probably going to see less minutes from guys like Jordan Clarkson and John Collins in exchange for playing these young players more to get them as much opportunity on the floor as possible so that the Jazz can try and figure out if they're actually worth keeping around past their rookie contracts. And that's a really important step in this rebuild. And so Lauri Markkanen is great. He's incredible. He can't win games by himself. If he's doing that, it's only a handful of games that he can do it that way, and it's probably against some really bad teams. And if you put him on a floor with, at least 3 rookies or sophomores trying to figure it out and being thrown into the fire, I really do think the Jazz can lose a lot of games. I think they'll be competitive. I think they're going to play with a ton of heart. They're going to try really hard. Will is going to be really hard on those kids. I guess, 18, 19-year-olds aren't necessarily kids. People get mad when I say that.
They're kids to me, Sarah.
Yeah,
they're kids to me.
Yeah. I think it probably sounds bad to say this, right? But yes, I think they're fully capable of losing a lot of games.
We're on the same page. I believe they're fully capable of losing at a high level as well. All right. Rotationally, what do you think? I mean, how is this going to look? Because, again, you have vets who want to play. You've got guys like Clarkson and guys like Sexton and John Collins. I don't know. Zanuck and Ainge both referenced youth movement, and Jay-Z's comments about the only way to get youth experience is playing time, to me, indicated that we might be in for a real young rotation, both starters and pieces coming off the bench. Just generally speaking, what do you think this rotation is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Lowry's going to play. I think, John Collins and Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, they're all going to play off the bench or starting. I'm not sure, right? But yes, there are going to be a lot of young guys in this rotation. There's 7 players on the roster that are under 23 years old. We're talking Walker Kessler, Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, Bryce Sensabaugh, the rookies, Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski. I would fully expect for all of them to be a part of the rotation. You might get 1 or 2 of those young guys in the G League maybe to start the season. But as you know, Spence, a twisted ankle here, a bumped elbow there, there's always kind of movement and changes. And so I would fully expect for all 7 of those guys to be playing real minutes this season.
All right, Sarah, before I set you loose, if, one of the things that, of course, everybody talks about, because it does happen every year, and it happens every year on teams that essentially have a lot of questions about minute distribution and shot total. I can remember Will saying, and I've heard some people say this behind the scenes too, somebody was going to pop out of all the pieces they received from Gobert and Mitchell and that entire thing because of the space and usage that somebody was going to be afforded, and would they take advantage of the opportunity? A lot of people thought it would be Colin Sexton because he'd had a 20-point-per-game year in Cleveland. Well, the player who popped was Lowry, and he's the one that was obviously a great fit for Will's system, and he's the one that capitalized on extra minutes and extra shots and extra opportunities. Of the young players, because I keep hearing, people over there say, well, maybe one of these young players really pops. Maybe one of these young players really evolves to a point. And we saw it with Donovan when he dropped 40-plus on the Pelicans, a couple of months into his rookie year. Who is the one young player you most confident saying that this year could actually pop, surprise everybody, and maybe be far ahead of schedule than any of us expected?
I think that okay, I'm just going to talk through some stuff, okay?
Let's do it. Let's hear it. This is a safe space, Sarah. It's a safe space.
My initial gut reaction is to say Cody Williams, because I think that he has like the best overall, most complete game coming into this season. If we're talking about that big group of young players, one of the things that Keontae George said today at Media Day about Cody Williams really encapsulated what I believe about him. He was saying that what impressed him the most about playing with Cody is that Cody blends in, and that can sound like a bad thing. But what he meant by that is that he's never doing the wrong thing. He's not out of position. He knows that if he passes Cody the ball and Cody doesn't have a shot right away, he's going to get off the ball as soon as he can. He's smart. He doesn't let guys get past him easily, even though he's really skinny. I think that's going to be his biggest learning curve, is just the fact that he needs to have his body catch up with his mind. He's 19 years old, right? Like, and he has the body of a 19-year-old. And so he's going to absolutely be pushed around a little bit. But I think that in terms of just being ready to go right now, it feels like Cody might be the guy. That being said, hearing from what players have seen in open gym and practice, I mean, Jordan Clarkson could not say enough good things today about Kyle Filipowski. He was like, this guy can do everything. He can bust you off the dribble. He can take you ISO. He can run in transition. He throws passes. He's versatile. Like, Jordan Clarkson is seeing the kind of Kelly Olynyk stuff that we thought maybe Kyle Filipowski would show in the NBA, and that's showing up kind of in open gym, and that's nice to see. We've also heard from a few of these guys that Isaiah Collier is really, really impressing people as like a true point guard and kind of pulling off passes that nobody thought were really possible. Now, if you go back to the sophomores that are coming in from being here last year, I'm still worried about Taylor Hendricks, and I really think that this is going to be maybe the most important year of his career in terms of proving that he can learn and grow his game. That being said, the guy looks great. He said that he's put on somewhere between 17 and 20 pounds this summer alone, and you can see it. It's very clear. And so maybe that added strength is going to give him a little bit more confidence in his game. Totally waiting to see that. That's an incredibly long-winded way of saying, if I had to put my money behind someone, it would be Cody Williams.
Fair enough. I also put on 20 pounds this summer, but nobody's congratulating me, Sarah.
Yeah, nobody's clapping.
I know. Oh, well. OTH. Hey, thanks for the time. Great to have you back on the show. Best to call. We'll chat soon, okay?
Yep, no problem.
All right. Sarah Todd covers the Jazz for the Deseret News. Before we catch a break, welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. It's been 5 weeks of college football, 4 weeks of pro football. I have not missed one game. Not one game. A lot I've had to DVR, but the DVR with Dish Network is massive, so you don't have to delete a bunch of stuff. I still have the original Rose Bowl on my DVR. Have you guys been able to watch all the football you want? The Jazz are starting, hockey club too, baseball playoffs, you name it. If you've been left in the dark, dial 801-424-DISH. That's 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, thanks so much. Crazy day in the TV world. We got an announcement that Dish Network and DirecTV are merging. Now, this is a unique situation because the merger is probably not going to happen for the next 5, 10, 12 months or so. But here's the thing. If you're on a DirecTV, you could switch to Dish now and get the new customer offer, or vice versa, switch from Dish to DirecTV. Take advantage of this before this merger happens, because this is where we can kick in the extra incentives, the extra money, the credits, movie channels, NFL Red Zone. Credits are the biggest part of it, plus the price guarantee. All that stuff will get locked in place. And this is a neat opportunity, and I'm excited about this because it'll truly unite that whole market and be able to, get the best prices. And that's the goal, right? Is the end consumer will be able to negotiate the better contracts. So call us up and take advantage of these deals while you can. Save money. If you're a cable customer, this is a no-brainer. $60 to $80 to $100+ a month is what you'll save. We can help you with internet. I've got this internet available where you can bundle with Dish. I got another provider, has no contract, and you get a $200 gift card. Call us. These products are fantastic. You'll save money. Plus, if you call us, I'll throw in dinner at JCW's and get you the best price guaranteed. 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, riding from the Dish Pros. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. All college football coming up next. Latest on the University of Utah, latest on Cam Rising. Josh Furlong stops by. Then we say goodnight just in time for Monday Night Football, where you can catch it all right here on ESPN 700. Monday Night Football comes your way. Coming up next, little Seahawks-Lions action. Don't love the doubleheader. Not a huge fan, but whatever. A lot of football tonight. We can wrap up our pro football weekend tonight with a double dip. Titans-Dolphins. Hard Rock Stadium going on right now. Then Seahawks-Lions. You can hear that game right here on this little radio station. We didn't do a lot of pro football. We'll do more throughout the week because the NFL so far this year has been awesome. We talked about this during Crosstalk, myself and Sean. I think it's the best TV viewing experience personally. I think the television show that the TV executives who put on NFL football over the air is far and away the best watching experience. The Bucs undressed the Eagles. And I mean, look, the Commanders are for real, dude. Like, Jaden Daniels is good, and I could keep going. I mean, there were a ton of crazy. The Ravens absolutely smoked the Bills on Sunday Night Football. Derrick Henry looked pretty good. So not a lot of pro football. Porter, I have something I need to get off my chest.
What's that?
My fantasy football team is really bad. No. Not like, hey, I have the worst team in the league. And
really?
It's not close. And I have Rasheed Rice. I have Tua. I have Puka Nacua. Joe Mixon didn't play yesterday. Nobody gives a rip about my fantasy team, but it's like depressingly bad. It's not that I'm one of the lesser teams. I am the worst team in my league, and it's a league I've won several times, and it's making me very sad.
The worst team in your league?
By far.
Wow.
There's a big gap between me and whoever. It's a 10-team league. There's a big gap between me and number 9. Like, I'm the worst team in the league by far.
Well, it's marathon. It's not a sprint. But usually if you're going to win a marathon, you can't get way behind at the beginning. So
yeah, it would take a yeoman's effort for me to get back into the mix. I'm about to lose I'm about to start 0-4.
Okay. Okay.
Unless can I get 78 points from Will Levis tonight? I'm screwed. I'm starting Will Levis. Okay?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you'll get less than 78 from Will on this evening, depending on how your league scores. But
it's very depressing. I do have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have Sam Laporta. I have Will Levis. No one cares. I have Tyreek Hill. I have a lot of players going tonight, but my buddy Denny put up like 150. I've scored like 17 because I started Rasheed Rice, who tore his ACL.
Yeah.
And Carson Steele can't hold on to the football, who I also started because Joe Mixon's hurt. It's depressing, dude. I'm starting to think you might be right. The better way to approach football season is not to play fantasy football because it genuinely makes me sad.
It will make you, and your energy will be differently focused if you're playing fantasy football than if you were just being a fan. But if it makes you feel any better, Spence, my Friday night after the Virginia Tech game was, I'll say, also sad. It was sad. So you can also just be sad and a regular fan. At least you have something to keep you busy.
That's fair. Dikembe Mutombo passed away at the age of 58 today after complications from brain cancer. I had a chance to meet Mr. Mutombo on several different occasions. He played in what I perceive to be the golden era of NBA basketball in the 90s. Legendary battles with Mark Eaton, legendary battles with Karl Malone, legendary battles with Patrick Ewing. Of course, the finger wave he became famous for is one of the greatest shot blockers and defensive players in the history of pro basketball. But more than that, he was the NBA's first global ambassador. Humanitarian, spoke 9 languages, and he was always trying to do everything he could to raise awareness for his home country and his people. And basketball, where Dikembe Mutombo is from, has really blown up. Basketball without borders, and a lot of this is because of Dikembe Mutombo and his native Democratic Republic of the Congo and across the continent of Africa. I mean, the game has blown up down there in recent years because Dikembe Mutombo really was able to build bridges. So very sad news at the age of 58. Jazz fans remember Mutombo when he was with the Nuggets. I remember him more with the Hawks and the 76ers. He did spend some time with the Nets, little cup of coffee with the Knicks and the Rockets, retired in 2009. He earned 3 All-NBA selections, ranks 20th in rebounds, second in blocks only to Hakeem Olajuwon. So very sad day. Dikembe Mutombo gave up his ghost at the age of 58. All right, Monday Night Football coming up on the other side. But Porter, before we say goodnight, what comes our way on a Tuesday show?
On a Tuesday edition of the program, the return of Richard Smitty Smith. We'll talk some hoops. We'll recap Jazz Media Day. Of course, Justin Zanuck, Danny Ainge, Ryan Smith, those guys all spoke over the weekend as well. So we'll recap all of that and preview some hoops with Richard Smitty Smith. And then from then on, it is all football. Joe Fortenbaugh joins the program of ESPN. Scott Mitchell joins the program. Of course, the former Ute and NFL quarterback, and one half of our broadcasting team on game days, and the other half of our broadcasting team on game days, Bill Riley, joins us on a Tuesday. So we got to do it, folks. We'll recap what we saw with the Utes over the weekend and look ahead to the bye week. It's a loss before a bye week, so we're going to have to talk about this for 2 weeks, prepare for it, and of course we'll mix in some hoops, some soccer, some golf, some MMA. Got a lot going on this week.
Over the past couple of months, if I've had a rough day, and let's just say I've had a few, thinking of Bill calling games of the mullet,
I know,
has brought me such great joy, and now that dream has died.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
It is a bummer. But we can always start another wager in some form. I think Bill wants a mullet. It sounds like he was – I've never heard Bill so ready to dive in on a bet. He's usually pretty skeptical.
That's a really good point, actually. Usually, like, remember when Bill worked here a number of years ago?
Like a couple months ago.
Months ago. How long it took me to convince him to wear a Hawaiian shirt,
right?
And he did it once, but it took me months.
But he was all in. First question about the mullet.
Yeah, he didn't really push back, and he said that, and he even implied he might keep it for the entire offseason. But unfortunately, that dream has died. Maybe we'll come up with a different bet. But stay tuned for that. That'll be a good Tuesday show. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today, Brian Jeffries, Josh Furlong, Logan Cooley. Fun getting to know that young man from the Utah Hockey Club, and Sarah Todd from the Deseret News. Any of the sound you may have missed from today, head to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's the ESPN 700 app, available in the App Store or the Google Play Store for free. Finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your pods, your shows these days, your catcher, we're there. Just search The Drive with Spence Checketts. Give us a rating, a review, follow along, subscribe, whatever your preferred podcast catcher asks you to do. Do it for us. It actually helps. For Porter, I'm Spence. Say goodnight. Monday Night Football, Seahawks, Lions comes your way. Coming up next right here on ESPN 700.